Good morning, everybody. If you're on the West Coast. So I just realized a couple of things. Um, Pretty interesting. How's everyone doing this morning? We're doing our second part, and let's see if it gets more interesting. What we're reading today is the James Patterson, Vicky Ward book about the Idaho 4, an American tragedy. I have the link in my description if you want to buy the book and you haven't yet and you want to read along with us, or you want to read it later, or you want the audiobook or the softback. Go into the description and there's a link, an affiliate link, and if you enter it that way, I think I get like 90 cents. So if you're going to buy the book, use the link. It'll help out the channel and I'd be really grateful. Thank you so much. Can you guys hear me? Just let me know if you can, because I'm going to tell you what happened. So because I have the projector, the mic is, for whatever reason, defaulting to the projector mic, which isn't as good of a mic as my normal mic, which I was like thinking, hi, I'm speaking into the mic, but I have to write StreamYard and ask them why I can't when I have the document up, why it wants to use that mic. So I think it's more important for you guys to see the book than maybe hear me perfectly crystal clear. So we're going to do it this way. And I was loud enough, but it's just not up, the audio is not up to the quality that I like, but I do think it's important for you guys to be able to read along, like to see it. Good morning, everybody. Can you guys hear me? Just let me know. I'll type it in chat. Let's see. And I'll remove myself so it's not awkward. But yeah, so that's how we're going to do it. It's not up to my quality, but whatever. It is what it is. Okay, good. Thank you so much. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. We're going to dive into it so we can get it started and get into some good stuff before my vocal fry hits. And I also realized mornings might not be the best time for me to talk. I don't know. So here's just the book. We made it to the second part 2, which is Inception. And let's see what we discover today. Everybody ready? Everyone grab their drink. Hit the thumbs up if you must, or the thumbs down. It doesn't really matter. For real, for real. Okay, guys. There's a nice, let me move that. It's annoying. Okay. All right. There's a nice little shadow on it. Actually, let me get in front. I don't know where the mic is on the document, on the projector. I don't even know where it is, so I could get close to it. But let me get closer to the book so I could read better for you guys. My water. All right. Ready, guys? Inception. Chapter 19. Saylorsburg, Pennsylvania, 2013. The 3 teenage boys are racing through the trees, pretending they're Marines. This is the Poconos. Racing around in the woods with knives or guns is normal here. In these dense woods, the kids can play paintball all day and airsoft, and they can hunt critters, and they can lose one another for hours on end. 2 of the boys don't notice exactly where the third boy, a tall kid with bulging eyes, positions himself. They don't see if he's close to the house or even inside it. The house is invisible from the road. Its owner, Mark Bayless, a former Navy SEAL, who was the father of one of the boys, bought it for precisely that reason. He liked its remoteness, that it was surrounded by woods. Mark is a skilled hunter of animals, but also of men. But even though he's a special forces veteran with skills and experience, he cannot catch the person who is repeatedly stealing his knives, his coins, his prescription pills, his girlfriend's jewelry. It maddens him. He keeps calling the cops, but they're worse than useless. They show up, file a report, do nothing. So Bayless stays frustrated. Could the thief be one of the veterans he houses nearby as part of the charity he founded? That's a bad feeling. He doesn't put it together until years later that the thief must have been one of his son's friends. He doesn't see it in the moment, but he's sure later how it happened. The first time he believes the tall, pale kid who weirded him out waited for the others to run off into the trees, then forced the lock and entered the garage where Mark keeps his collection of army knives, and took one. On the next visit, Mark thinks he took another. One by one, they vanished. Next, it was Bayless's coin collection, worth $25,000. Bayless talks to his son Jack and his nephew Brandon about the thefts. He says he's going to catch the thief if they try it again. Shoot him. Jack tells the third kid, whose name is Brian, that his dad is pissed. Brian tells Jack he reveres his father. That's what he says, or at least what he puts in a text. But what he does, or what Mark thinks he does, smacks of something different than straight up hero worship. Someone starts to stalk Mark Bayless. The stalker hides in those trees, camouflaged, munching on Reese's peanut butter cups, dropping the wrappers on the ground, waiting for Mark to leave on one of his orange motorbikes or in his pickup truck. The stalker forces the door open with a knife and heads for the bathroom where Bayless keeps old prescription drugs. And the thief can guess where he'd keep jewelry. In the bedroom. One time, the thief is up in the bedroom and hears wheels in the driveway. Bayless is back. Later, much later, Bayless puts the scene together in his head. He comes to believe that Brian, knowing he has the element of surprise on his side, hides, waits for the veteran to walk toward the back of the house, then sprints out the front door and into the woods he knows will protect him. Through the trees and onto the road. Safe. For now. Chapter 20. Brodesheadville, Pennsylvania, fall 2012. Did we go back in time? Hold on. Yeah, so this was 2013. What I just read was 2013. And so we're going back. This is the second time so far in the book where we're going back. Okay. When the tall, thin man and the fat teenage boy enter his boxing gym near Big Cheese Pizza off Route 209, Jesse Harris thinks this is a familiar sight. Anxious parent bringing in troubled child. The former pro boxer opened this gym here for precisely this reason. He thinks of himself as having a dual role, physical fitness guru and mental fitness guru. Jesse set up the gym to offer local people who've given up, teens mostly, hope. Purpose. Anyone who's failed in life can make it in Jesse's gym. Boys looking for brotherhood, girls looking for sisterhood, or to learn self-defense. Anyone who's prepared to work, to train. Jesse is proud of his results. There are regular stories in the Poconos Record about the correlation between the work done in his gym and the reduction of crime in the area. Years after they've trained with him, people stop him in the street or wave him down in his car to express their appreciation. It makes Jesse feel great. Today, the lumbering kid who barely makes eye contact lets his dad do the talking. The man introduces himself as Michael Koberger and says with forced brightness, "This is my son, Brian." He says Brian wants to lose weight. He's changing his habits, his life. He's going to start a vegan diet, but he needs to build muscle, speed up his metabolism. The father's clearly a nice guy, Jesse notes, but a talker, hardly pausing to breathe. He tells Jesse he's got his own HVAC business, works for the Pleasant Valley School District. He glances around the gym and tells Jesse he'd be happy to help him with any maintenance issues for free. Fix a refrigerator, that sort of thing. Jesse says he can help Brian as long as Brian is prepared to help himself. Can you guys still hear me? I can't hear myself because it's in this mic. Okay. He tells Brian, whose eyes stay glued to the floor, that he can use the gym daily for as long as he wants. The other guys in the gym look at the fat kid and roll their eyes. They've given up on him already. He'll never fit in, they're thinking. Jesse wonders if they're right. He, too, isn't sure about this kid. But the next day, right after school, the kid appears, swinging his backpack off his shoulders. The gym is in easy walking distance of the high school, but his dad drops him off. Jesse's regulars ignore the kid as he gets to work. No one else in the room is anywhere near that size. He must be more than 100 pounds overweight. Jesse shows Brian the gloves, and they do basic pad work. Jesse stands on one side of a face-size ring hanging from a ceiling, and Brian stands on the other. Pow, pow. Left, right. Though his bulging eyes can't seem to stop moving, the kid looks focused. His considerable body weight goes into the punch. Jab, jab. 1, 2. And then 1, 2, 3. Jesse can tell that the kid likes the rhythm of punching. They all do, Jesse thinks. That's why boxing is better than therapy. The kid is surprising. He's back the next day. Jesse shows him the power pad. The kid stands on it and pulls the bands up to his shoes. If he keeps at it, Jesse tells him, he'll be able to pull the bands over his head. And the kid comes back again and again. Every day, the dad drops him off, coming in to chat with Jesse if the coach has the time. He mentions that Brian's had trouble in school. He's been bullied. Doesn't like their new house. His friend Jeremy was a bad influence, and they'd had to separate them. Jesse notices as the days pass that Brian is getting leaner and more focused. He spends 2 to 3 hours at a time in the gym. It's almost as if he's got nothing else to do, Jesse thinks. He probably doesn't. Now when the dad comes in, he tells Jesse he's proud of his kid. Jesse tells him he's proud of Brian too. The kid's no bother, not to Jesse or anyone else. Keeps to himself, works out, then leaves. The regulars start to acknowledge him. Hey, Brian. He's one of them. For now. Chapter 21. Effort, Pennsylvania, April 2013. Casey Arntz is playing a video game, The Sims, on a Friday night when she gets a text from Brian Koberger. She smiles because she likes Brian. That's a bit of a controversial stance in her friend group. Brian has had his ups and downs with her younger brother, Tom, who says Brian likes to get physical for no reason. One of Tom's friends, Brandon Andriola, says Brian has a temper. There's also the fact that Brian hangs out with Jeremy Saba, who Casey thinks is a dick, and Saba is known to be a junkie these days. But she likes Brian. He may not say much, but Brian has always been sweet to her. He's solicitous in his text. He always asks her how she is. Most recently, he's been asking about her work in the glitter manufacturer in New Jersey, about her career plans. She wants to go into interior design after college. Casey knows Brian's plans. He graduated high school early, in March, and wants to go to college, maybe East Stroudsburg University, in the fall to study criminal justice. Tonight, He's texting Casey because he needs a favor. He tells her his car broke down and he has to get to his cousin's house near Luna Rosa, a restaurant in Broadheadsville. That's a 20-minute drive up Route 209. He doesn't say why. Casey says fine. She's happy to help Brian. She feels sorry for him that he's struck all the way up in Indian Mountain Lake in that weird gated community. It's a full mile from his new home to the security guard's booth. So she gets into her car and drives the 3 miles up the mountain to meet Brian, who's waiting for her outside the security gate. She drives him to Luna Rosa. He pops in and out of the restaurant, then asks if she can swing by CVS quickly because he needs to buy needles for his aunt, who is a diabetic. Casey thinks that's a bit weird. Shady, actually. But it's hard to argue with such apparent compassion. She gives him the benefit of the doubt. When he's inside CVS, she thinks fondly of the times they've joshed together, like when they used to play the game of things with Tom and Brandon, a party game where players guess who wrote which anonymous answer to prompts like, things you shouldn't say to your mom. She misses those happy times. A few days later, he remembers to text her happy birthday. She thanks him, as she always does. But when she next sees Brandon, he tells her it's common knowledge that Brian gets heroin at Luna Rosa. That's why he needed Casey to give him a ride there and back, and why he stopped to get needles at CVS. Casey feels sick. She realizes that most likely she was carrying heroin in her car. Had she been pulled over, she could have been arrested. Now Casey is mad. At 7:49 p.m. on May 21st, she sends Brian a Facebook message, a rare instance in which she is driving the exchange, not him. I would like to hand you a big congratulations for lying to me about driving you around. I should have added up beforehand, but thought I was doing something nice for someone. So thank you. If you would have gotten caught, I would have gotten in trouble just for driving you around, not even knowing why. Needles for your aunt? Wow. Great, real great story. Bye. A full day later, at 8:33 p.m., he responds, I'm in rehab. I know that, Casey writes back. She receives no reply. But as the weeks turn into months, she forgives Brian. How could she not? He's back from rehab, and he's so patently lonely. He texts her repeatedly to ask if her parents will let them hang out. And when she doesn't respond, his text becomes sadder and less frequent. In early 2014, Brian tells her to be proud that she's making something of her life. I'm not, he writes. Casey wishes that she could be nicer to him, that they all could be nicer to him. He seems to be struggling. On March 27, 2014, nearly a year after the car ride to Luna Rosa, he sends a text. You know I love you guys. Always will, even if we stop talking one day. What is Brian talking about? What does it mean? Chapter 22. Indian Mountain Lake, Pennsylvania, 2014. Michael Koberger doesn't want to make a call. He's about to. But he has no choice. His own son is a threat to the family. None of it has worked. Not the boxing, not the diet, not the trips to the gun range, or the move away from Jeremy Saba, Brian's childhood friend who's gotten into heroin too. Not even a stint in rehab. Brian can't stop using, which means he can't stop stealing. Now he's taken Melissa's cell phone and sold it at a mall kiosk for $200, half what it's worth. Actions have consequences. Children, whatever their age, need to understand that. So he closes his eyes briefly and then dials 911. The police arrive, read Brian his rights, and cuff him. The kid is civil, barely looks at his dad. He knows who called the cops and why. There's a time to be calm, to talk to police politely. Brian knows that because he's only 16. There's a good chance this will be expunged from his record if he behaves. He'll go, again, to rehab. Outwardly, he'll be the good, polite son everyone wants. But inside, alone in the basement, Brian lets his true feelings out on TikTok and SoundCloud, writing, recording, and posting an original rap song made for other sufferers of visual snow, a neurological condition that is the visual equivalent of TV static. The rage, the loneliness just pours out of him. The words are layered over a beat that is equally staccato and furious, a track no one in his family is likely to hear. But this is the real him. Always the same thing that disrupts my life. Wonder when I'll change. I guess when the time is right. Procrastinating my deranged to change would be a fight. So I'm pacifist, like I'm afraid to get a bloody fist. Look at this. My mind is pissed, and I keep running. Why is this when I hit it always leaves them stunning? I stuck in the future, but I'm never looking at the fucking present. Keep it up. Act like you're all that. Leave your loved ones crying like some seagulls. You're not my equal. You are evil, but I'm unintelligible people, evil, devil. And now I'm going regal. Don't fuck with us. Hope you learned your lesson. Chapter 23, Indian Mountain Lake, Pennsylvania, August 2016. Brian sits in the basement. He's out of drugs, of cash, of friends. Now his mom is on him to go to Bible study with her. She thinks that'll fix him. He's gone a couple of times. A text beeps on his phone. Brian reads it. Maybe there's something to the Bible stuff after all. This is divine timing. Jeremy Saba has been arrested for a DUI and possession of drugs. He's in jail. One man's misfortune is another's opportunity. Brian calls a familiar person. Connie, he says to the woman who picks up. She trusts him. Wrongly. Brian, she says, and thanks him for what she assumes is a call of condolence and support. Jeremy's mom tells him that she and Jeremy's dad will visit their son tomorrow at the jail by the courthouse in Broadensville. And Brian hopes. The trusting woman shares the time they're planning to go. Would Brian come visit Jeremy right after? Brian says yes. But as he ends the call, he might have been forming his real plan. Connie later said that the Saba's absence from their home gave him the perfect window to get what he needed. He used to live next door, so he knew the house, knew where Connie kept her jewelry and where she left her iPad, things he could sell to get his next fix. And he knew exactly how to break in through the garage. The next day, he executes the plan perfectly. As Connie and Jairus Saba leave the courthouse in Broadensville, Connie wonders where Brian is. Why hasn't he shown up? He sounded so concerned and solicitous on the phone. Something Jeremy once said nags at her. Brian is manipulative. When the Sabas pull up to their house in effort, she sees at once why Brian didn't come. Someone has been in their home. Their door from the garage has been forced open. Her iPad is gone. She doesn't need to wonder who the thief is. She knows. Will she call the police? Her fingers hover over her phone. She thinks about Brian's mom, Mary Ann, a teacher who, like Connie, works in the local school district. Mary Ann has in the past occasionally and uncharacteristically shared some of Brian's struggles with her. There was his Asperger's syndrome diagnosis and later the drugs. She puts the phone away without calling anyone. She doesn't know any of the specifics, but she intrudes that Koberger family is in enough pain right now without Connie Saba adding to their problems. Chapter 24, Effort, Pennsylvania, 2018. She hasn't seen him in months. Then she turns and suddenly there he is, in her kitchen, standing there unannounced, startling her. Jeremy's mom, Connie, isn't even sure which door he came through. He's just there, tall, well over 6 feet, towering over her, eyes bugging out, and he's thin, she notices. Really, really thin. Brian, she says, what are you doing here? Even as she asks the question, she knows the answer, because she knows what they teach in rehab. He's come to atone, to make amends. He's come to say he's sorry for stealing from her. I knew it was you, Connie tells him. There's much more Brian could say. That he started working toward a psychology degree at Northampton Community College, that he's lonely, he misses Jeremy, but he doesn't say any of that. He doesn't get the chance. After he's done apologizing, Connie thanks him, and then, with as much kindness as she can muster, Connie asks Brian to leave and never come back to the Saba house. She needs to protect her son from the tall, newly thin former neighbor. Maybe, as he claims, he doesn't do drugs anymore. But somehow she senses that he's still a threat to their family. Chapter 25, Center Valley, Pennsylvania, 2018. Brian's new classmates in the psychology program at DeSales University call him the Ghost. There's something spooky about him. Every day he enters class in the same uniform, a wrinkled black long-sleeve button-down and a tan leather jacket. He's always carrying his silver laptop and a Starbucks coffee cup. After class, poof, Brian's back in his car and gone in a cloud of dust, starting the 45-minute drive along routes 78 and 33 back to Effort for his nighttime security guard job and any other job he can get. A lab partner, Josh Ferrero, likes how organized Brian is with their biology project, testing how caffeine affects the heart rate of water fleas. But the guy's eyes seem unnaturally wide open, and they're constantly darting around while his face is completely still. It's unnerving, Josh thinks. Josh notices that Brian sometimes becomes less aloof and more animated in psychology sleuthing, a class taught by Dr. Kathleen Ramsland, a famous criminologist. But it's fair to say they all love this particular class because it's fun. Dr. Ramsland takes her students into a building they call the crime scene house. It's like a theater set. The students pretend they're detectives called in to investigate a crime. They're given a scenario like this. The gun was found here. There was brain splatter on the roof, 2 bullet holes there, and a rifle was in Johnny's hands. Then they're asked to theorize as to what happened. Dr. Ramsland teaches her students that killers get tunnel vision when they're committing murder. That's why mistakes get made. Amid the high adrenaline and hyper-focus on the act itself, killers can forget things they otherwise would not. Brian takes careful notes. He will later write an essay for his finals that he's learned staging is common among killers, and that investigators must wear fiber-free clothing to avoid having their DNA contaminate the crime scene. The DeSales students also study criminal profiling. They learn what sort of person chooses what sort of murder weapon. Typically, Ramsland tells them, white men choose knives. They're taught about digital forensics and learn that it's almost impossible to delete one's digital footprint. And they learn about procedure and law. For example, how the legal process would likely play out if one of them was charged with murder. Not that anyone thinks that would happen. Most of the students expect to go into law enforcement. Brian is no exception. He texts his friend Jack that he wants to catch high-profile offenders. Dr. Ramsland emphasizes to these future crime fighters how difficult it is to spot the killers in their midst before they strike. She's an expert on serial killers like Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, and Ed Kemper. She wrote a book based on her years of correspondence with Dennis Rader, the infamous BTK killer, whose moniker stood for his grisly methods: bind, torture, kill. Rader, she tells the class, did not kill for 15 years while he was busy raising his own child. How to differentiate between him and us? Dr. Ramsland says there's a new theory arguing that psychopaths aren't the product of socioeconomic and environment alone. Biology has a larger role than people previously thought. The brains of psychopaths are structurally and functionally different from other people's, which means the only way to cure a psychopath is to get him therapy at a very early stage, by around age 4, and try to train his brain to change. Brian listens carefully to this and takes more notes. His classmates can't see what he's writing. Back. Okay. Perfect. Chapter 26, Center Valley, Pennsylvania, 2018. The image on their screens is mesmerizing. A dark-haired 22-year-old man with movie star looks sits behind the wheel of his black BMW. His head tilted to one side. His face is bathed in the reddish glare of a setting California sun. He talks slowly, thoughtfully to the camera, as if to hypnotize his viewers with his words. Tomorrow, he says, is the day of retribution. You forced me to suffer all of my life. Now, I'll make you all suffer. His name is Elliot Roger. He's from a wealthy family. He flies first class. His dad is a well-known movie director. He appears to be blessed in many ways, but he's still a virgin, and he's furious about it. In the video, one of a series he recorded on May 2014, he delivers a message to all the girls who have rejected him since he hit puberty. Hours later, he embarks on a murderous rampage. In his apartment, he stabs his 2 roommates, Chen Wang James Hong and George Chen, and a friend, Wehan David Wang. Outside the Alpha Phi sorority house near campus of UC Santa Barbara, Roger fatally shoots 2 women, Catherine Cooper and Veronica Weiss, and injures a third, Bianca DeCock. At a local deli, he shoots and kills another young man, Christopher Michaels Martinez. Then he drives his sleek black BMW through the crowded streets of nearby Isla Vista, shooting indiscriminately out the window. He injures 13 more people before crashing his car and committing suicide with a single bullet to the head. Not only did Roger meticulously plan the mass murder and suicide, he also broadcast his scheme in a series of videos on his YouTube channel. If you hit the mute button, you'd think you were gazing at the next Tom Cruise. But if you unmute, to all the girls that I've desired so much, they've all rejected me and looked down upon me as an inferior man. I hate all of you. I can't wait to give you exactly what you deserve. In fact, Catherine Ramsland explains in her forensic psychology class, Roger had waited. His ultimate act of vengeance was carefully thought out, the result of years of pent-up anger about his lonely life. He kept a journal outlining his sexual and social frustrations and his various coping mechanisms: video games, late-night drives, trips to the gun range, buying lottery tickets, a new life in Santa Barbara. But none of it gave him sex or girls or the friends he so craved. When he lost his only childhood male friend, he was triggered and began to plan the diabolical end. He intended his final act to be so performative that it would catapult him to global fame. The last words he wrote in his journal were, "Finally, I can show the world my true worth." Roger titled the 137-page manifesto My Twisted World and emailed it to his therapist, who sent it to his mother, who received it minutes before her son began his killing spree. At the time of Roger's day of retribution, he was seeing multiple therapists. The month before, his parents had reported his troubling mental state to authorities, and the police visited his home. But as Roger was well aware, the law was narrow and precise about grounds for search warrants. He wrote in his manifesto, "If the police would have searched my room, found all of my guns and weapons, I would have been thrown in jail, denied the chance to exact revenge on my enemies. That wasn't the case, but it was so close." Professor Ramsland explains that the police need better training to spot the telltale signs of the potential suicide mass murderer. One key tool comes from the American Association of Suicidology. Each letter of the acronym is PATH. WARM represents a warning sign. I, ideation. S, substance abuse. P, purposelessness. A, anxiety. T, trapped. H, hopelessness. W, withdrawal. A, anger. R, recklessness. M, mood changes. As they learn this, the students don't realize that one of them, Brian, exhibits every single one of these symptoms. No one person has full visibility on all the parallels between Brian's life and Roger's. No one knows about the complaints Brian texted Jack Bayless about life on Broke Bachelor Mountain. He describes himself as a, quote, good Catholic university student, full homo. No one knows that, like Roger, Brian is a virgin who hates women. No one knows that Brian copes with loneliness by immersing himself in video games. Like Roger, he goes for night drives. Like Roger, he visits the gun range. And, like Roger, he goes to a local bar and tries to pick up women. Chapter 27, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, 2019. Instead of heading back to Effort on the highway, Brian takes the scenic route through Lehigh Valley. 15 minutes after leaving Center Valley, he's parked across the street from the Seven Sirens Brewing Company, which looks more like a vast Manhattan loft space than a college town bar. The students from nearby Lehigh University come here often. Brian knows this, and that's why he's here. Elliot Roger wrote that he kept trying to place himself in settings where he could pick up women, but no one noticed him. Brian must think that surely he'll be noticed. Women must spot his looks, his intelligence, and they must want him. They don't. So typically, after a few drinks, Brian pushes his way into unwanted conversations with both female bartenders and female patrons. He even asks for their addresses. Women have started complaining to the brewery's owner, Jordan Cerulek, about the creepy guy with the bulging eyes. So he put the kid on his watch list. Tonight, Cerulek isn't going to give Brian the chance to have more than one beer. "Hey," he says, "I need you to leave women alone. There have been some complaints." Brian feigns astonishment. He gives a heck of a performance, almost Broadway level. Cerulek will remember and demonstrate it in the future. I don't know what you're talking about, Brian says. You have me totally confused. Brian takes another sip of his beer and another. It's like they're playing a game of chicken. Brian finishes his beer. Casually, he saunters out. Slow Rick. Doesn't know if his words have had any impact. But as the days tick by, he registers something that makes him happy. The kid doesn't come back. Chapter 28, Effort, Pennsylvania, 2021. Brian is immersed in studying for his master's degree. Even though he's been stuck at home, working remotely thanks to COVID, he's doing so well that one of his professors, Michelle Bolger, wants to recommend him for a PhD in criminal justice at Washington State University. She's only ever recommended one other person. Brian is feeling elated, but soon after March 16th, his phone pings with news that Jeremy Saba is dead. The facts are tragically familiar. Saba was found upstairs in his bedroom. A lethal dose of fentanyl killed him. Extraordinary what a small pill can do. Earlier, he'd been tinkering with a car in the driveway, then drove off in it to go get some oil, he told his mother. Minutes later, he was home, and then dead. The local police took his phone and computer, but they never found the dealer. Brian is away when Jeremy dies. His parents had wanted to keep the news from him until he returned because they knew how hard it would hit. All that's left for Brian are memories. Memories of Jeremy, as high as a kite, making them all walk the yellow brick road, the dotted painted lines on the highway. Jeremy driving his Mazda, Jeremy playing video games, Jeremy working out. The last time Brian's parents saw Jeremy, he'd been doing well, apparently. Mr. and Mrs. Koberger had run into Jeremy and his parents at the Texas Roadhouse, a steakhouse in Strasbourg. It was a good meeting. Brian's dad told Jeremy he was proud of him for getting clean. Now Brian pounds the table with his fist. He doesn't phone Jeremy's parents. He won't even attend the memorial service for Jeremy or contribute to the memorial page online. He knows that the tipping point for Elliot Roger was the loss of his best friend, James Ellis. If only he were still my friend, Roger had written to James. Brian gets it. If only Jeremy were still alive. Chapter 29, Pullman, Washington, April 2022. Chief Gary Jenkins, head of the Pullman Police Department, looks at his list of questions and then up at the intern candidate he's Zooming with. The name of the guy staring back at him on the screen is Brian Koberger. Jenkins has no idea where he's from or where he's situated for their online meeting. He certainly has no idea that just last month, Koberger purchased a K-bar knife, sheath, and a sharpener on Amazon for unknown purposes. What Chief Jenkins does know is that Koberger is an incoming graduate student and teaching assistant in the well-regarded criminology department at Washington State University. WSU, or Wazoo as it's called, is in Pullman, so it's on Jenkins' beat. Koberger has applied for an internship with the Pullman PD. Chief Jenkins can see the guy is hyper-focused. Not much else stands out about him, good or bad. But there's something odd about him that makes Jenkins say later he didn't think this guy would be able to build trust in his department. There's something antisocial about him. They chit-chat for 30 minutes. Chief Jenkins winds up giving the internship to someone else, and he doesn't think much about the guy after that. Barely remembers his name even. Brian packs up his gear, his new knife included, and gets in his car for the long road trip to the other side of the country. WSU is in Pullman, Washington, on the border of Idaho, the Pacific Northwest. Elliot Roger gave himself one last chance before planning his day of retribution. He moved cities, went from LA to Santa Barbara for college. I realized that my miserable, lonely virgin life was going to continue and my only hope was to give Santa Barbara a try, Roger wrote. Brian puts the key in the ignition. One last try. Chapter 30. Pullman, Washington, late August 2022. It's the week before classes begin at Washington State University in the small town of Pullman. The little airstrip Pullman shares with nearby Moscow, Idaho, is just a 7-minute drive from the hilly campus. WSU is a large school, much larger than UI, with over 30,000 students. WSU territory is marked by the massive billboard bearing the logo of the Cougars, WSU's football team, who are competitive in their division, unlike Moscow's Vandals. But football is not the school's only selling point. This August, WSU famed criminology and criminal justice graduate program has attracted an international elite bunch, a self-described cohort of 11 students, 7 women and 4 men, who will be pursuing master's or PhD degrees. One student comes from South Korea. Another, Sa, is from Bangladesh. Leon is from Taiwan. At a meet and greet with the 20-odd faculty members, the students pile their paper plates high with mounds of Panda Express and size one another up. They make small talk and learn about differing areas of interest, ranging from cybercrime to human trafficking to police militarization and domestic terrorism to drug crimes and drug courts. One person says he studies maps, the subject the others can't quite fathom his interest in. At 42, Ben Roberts is the second oldest in the group. He suspects he's the only one from the West Coast. He looks at the others serious, scholarly demeanors, and thinks he's probably the only one who has ever used a chainsaw. Ben notices one of the students in particular. His name is Brian Koberger. Brian stands out because he's painfully thin. His eyes move too quickly, and the bags under them are dark and too prominent for someone his age. Ben also notices that Brian never takes off his jacket, even in the August heat. Ben assumes, wrongly, that he needs insulation on account of his willowy frame. Ben does not know about Brian's history with heroin. He doesn't know that Brian might be keeping his forearms covered in public to hide the telltale track marks of his past addiction. Ben is flattered when Brian comes over to chat with him. Brian is doing a PhD, which makes him senior to Ben, who is in the master's program. Brian asks a lot of questions about Ben's background. The conversation kicks into high gear when Ben tells Brian that he worked for the TSA. He was head of security at a small airport. Brian lights up. I've worked in security too, he says. Cool, says Ben. Where? Brian becomes vague. Oh, back home. He doesn't say where home is exactly. Ben shares some experiences he thinks Brian might have had himself. He tells Brian that there are times at the airport when he found it particularly inelegant to have to exercise access control. That is, having to tell people who believed they had a clearance to enter a certain area that in fact they didn't, and then barring their path. Did you have any of that? Brian nods vigorously. Ben continues. And the worst I found is when people do have the clearance, but they haven't got the right paperwork on them. It's so embarrassing. I have to stop them from going through. I know exactly what you mean, says Brian. Ben wonders for a split second if that is in fact true. It felt like he might have been stretching, he later said, but at the time, Ben went with the flow. Brian seems very articulate, Ben thinks. He spits words out with the fluency and confidence of someone who expects to be listened to. Ben has no idea that Brian is in fact giving a bravo performance, playing the role of someone he has never been, namely, someone who belongs in the room. The silent, awkward introvert has been replaced, for now, by a confident, articulate intellectual. Brian might be figuring out the WSU he can start fresh, become the man he dreams of being. No one needs to know about his troubled past. Brian turns from Ben and makes a beeline for the group of senior faculty members. Like a Wall Street CEO, one by one, he pumps their hands and works the room. "I'm Brian," he says, "and I'm excited to be here." Chapter 31, Pullman, Washington, early fall 2022. The cohort is sitting in a circle in a classroom in Wilson Short Hall. It's the third class in the research methodology course taught by their toughest grader, a red-headed French professor named Emily Pedinal, whose expertise is in sexually violent offenders. Brian is in the seat next to Dr. Pedinal, on her right. He takes this seat each time because he knows it means he'll be called upon to present his assignment first as the professor makes her way around the circle. Brian appears to like going first. He appears to think it gives him an advantage over all the Beckys in the room. Becky is a term used in the manosphere chat groups Brian is familiar with. Brian knows all about incels, that is, involuntary celibates. Incels are members of a movement of frustrated men, all virgins, that sprang up on 4chan in 2014, just hours after Elliot Rodger committed mass murder and then suicide, the act that Brian studied back in Professor Ramsland's class at DeSales. The idea of the movement, started in Rodger's honor, is that one day the incels will succeed in their beta revolution and overthrow the Beckys, Stacys, and Chads who have managed to make the betas feel so small and rejected. The group is increasingly associated with violence. Brian looks around the class. These women could all be considered Beckys, defined by incels as feminists who dye their hair, post stupid opinions, and need to be the dominant ones in relationships. By contrast, Stacys are stereotypically nubile, used to male attention, prolific on social media, and date hunky, rich chads. According to incel lore, Beckys need to be put in their place. After Brian gives his presentation, the Becky next to him starts hers. He leans in closely, paying attention. As soon as she's done, he begins his offensive. He peppers her with questions that he appears to think show how smart he is and how dumb she is. Did she think about this theory? And what about that one? And had she read the book? She's getting annoyed. He can see that. Brian looks over at Ben as if seeking affirmation, but Ben looks away. Some of the women are visibly pissed. Brian doesn't seem bothered by their discomfort. Elliot Rodger would have been proud. Chapter 32, Pullman, Washington, fall 2022. It's been a long day. Brian is tired. He's sitting in the back row in the class of Dr. Hilary Mellinger, a recent graduate herself, who teaches a course on the role of cultural issues like immigration and homelessness in criminal justice. Brian isn't particularly interested in Dr. Mellinger's course. Incels might consider her another Becky. She's an advocate for immigrant women and girls who are fleeing men perpetrating gender-based violence by knocking them around. Incels are reportedly at the heart of rising gender-based violence. In 2018, a Canadian self-described incel, Alec Minsanian, was motivated, he said, by a hatred of women, to plow a van onto a crowded Toronto sidewalk, killing 11 people. He's been sentenced to prison for life, and he's become the icon of the movement. Dr. Mellinger interrupts his reverie. "Brian," she says suddenly, and she asks him a question about immigration that he hasn't prepared for. Did he even hear it correctly? Shit, he doesn't know that one. The Beckys have turned around and are staring at him. So is Ben, who observed later. You can kind of tell he was trying to say something, but it just wouldn't come out. He couldn't find the words. Dr. Mellinger looks shocked. Ben said Brian looked like a dog caught in a thunderstorm. If his ears could have been pinned back, they would have been pinned back. He was just stiff as a board, didn't move, didn't speak, just kind of wide-eyed. Fortunately for Brian, this happens in the final few minutes of class. He's the last to leave the room, so no one sees his face as he heads to his car. No one can see if he's red-hot angry or red-hot ashamed. Either way, the stuttering, awkward guy, the real self he tried to leave behind in Pennsylvania, just appeared like a jack-in-the-box. He knows that you can put him back, but you can't erase the discomfort in what just happened. Chapter 33, Pullman, Washington, Fall 2022. On page 118 of his manifesto, Elliot Rodger wrote, I had nothing left to live for but revenge. I lived in a college town full of young, attractive students who partied and had sex all the time, and I didn't get to experience any of it. No one invited me to any parties. And in all the times I went out by myself to Isla Vista, none of the beautiful blonde girls showed any interest in having sex with me. Not one girl. These are crimes that cannot go unpunished. The more I thought about all these injustices that were dealt to me, the more eager I became for revenge. That's all I had left. Months later, the people physically closest to Brian, the members of his cohort, looked for the smallest clue as to why it all went down. There will likely be a trial at which they hope to find answers, but this, or something like this, is what they speculate happened sometime that August. Brian goes for an evening drive. He drives and drives in the dark. He drives when he can't sleep, when he needs to clear his head, and when the nightmares and visual snow occur, which they're doing now. Tap, tap, tap. He's back in the basement and on Tap Talk, the online message board, back when he was a teenager. I feel myself slipping away. It's as if the ringing in my ears and the fuzz in my vision is simply all of the demons in my head mocking me. I fall asleep. I wake up quickly to bloody screams. Is any of this here? Am I brain damaged? No. Then why am I like this? Brian has no one to share this hopelessness with, even if he could find the words to do it. The others don't seem to want to hang out. He knows the cohort gathers on weekends for a beer. No one has invited him to join them. Just like Elliot Rodger, who swung between two college communities, one in Santa Barbara and the other 11 miles away in Isla Vista, Brian has one other option to find a Stacy willing to date him, Moscow, Idaho, across the state border. He parks the car in town and heads to a place he's read about online, the Mad Greek. They serve vegan pizza. As soon as he walks inside, he notices the blonde waitress. With her long hair and sphinx-like blue eyes, she would definitely be marked as a Stacy by the incel. She's the epitome of women who turned down Elliot Rodger. Her name is Maddie, like Elliot's childhood friend Maddie, who grew into someone who ignored Rodger. Will she notice Brian? She comes over to ask what he'd like. He knows what he'd like. Her. Chapter 34. Moscow, Idaho, August 21st, 2022. It's pitch black, but anyone can see Maddie sitting at her vanity, as clear as day through the window. She has no idea who's out there in the parking lot looking. But neighbors like Lexi Patterson see her nightly routine. They know that she always takes her time putting on her face, foundation, then blush, eyeshadow, mascara, or fake lashes. Sometimes she uses the curling iron to style her long blonde hair. Anyone who didn't know Maddie's name would learn it in an instant because the letters spelling it out are in the window. Anyone can see right into her room's pink interior and discover the minutiae of her life as a cutesy girl who likes order. Even her quilt is pink. A passerby who stopped and stared would know she has a boyfriend because on weekends he sits on the bed when Maddie and the other girls model clothes for Instagram and TikTok. She tags the boyfriend on social media. His name is Jake. Recently, the boyfriend brought Maddie cookies and a bouquet of flowers that stands in a vase on her dresser. Her mom, or at least a woman who looks exactly like Maddie, often pops in, and so does an older, graceful-looking woman, Maddie's grandmother, whom she calls Deedle. Anyone can see just from watching that Maddie is close to all these family members. She's even making a little quilt for someone, a baby. Kaylee, one of her friends, often pops in from next door. These two are obviously close. They pore over their phones, comparing social media posts, taking photos and videos of each other. They're so immersed in their phones and their coziness that they never think to look farther than the sanctuary of their yard. They don't see anyone out there staring. Corporal Brett Payne of the Moscow police later alleges, based on AT&T cell phone records and the pings Brian's cell phone made off a Moscow cell tower, that was what Brian did. Payne alleges that he was there at least 12 times between August 21st and November 13th, almost always late at night, cloaked in darkness. The theory among Maddie's friends is that she rejected him, so he watched, waiting. Elliot Roger wrote of reuniting with a childhood friend named Maddie in the months before the day of retribution. She was a popular, spoiled USC girl who partied with her hot, popular blonde-haired clique of friends. My hatred for them all grew from each picture I saw of her profile. They were the kind of beautiful, popular people who lived pleasurable lives and would look down on me as inferior scum, never accepting me as one of them. They were my enemies. They represented everything that was wrong with this world. Corporal Payne alleges that on the night of August 21st, Brian was there at King Road between 10:34 p.m. and 11:35 p.m. At 11:37 p.m., at the junction of Farm Road and Pullman Highway, on his way back to Pullman, Brian is pulled over by Latah County Sheriff's Deputy Corporal Duke. His car doesn't have a front plate. It's registered in Pennsylvania, where front plates aren't required. He'll need to change that in Washington and Idaho, Duke tells him. Brian says, okay. He's smooth with the officer. Natural. The officer has no clue as to what Brian is really doing in Moscow. If Brian is asked about it, which he will be, he'll deny that he was doing anything other than going out for a drive, like he always does when under stress. He often goes out stargazing, he'll say. The police can't see into his mind. No one can. Even though the people out here in the Pacific Northwest do try. Boy, do they try. How you guys doing? I need to get fresh water, so I'm going to take 2 seconds. Hopefully it sounds good. If you guys missed the beginning and you rewind to it, so I guess the mic is using the projector's mic. So I'm like, but I think it's good. Don't you guys want to see the words? Would you rather just listen? Like, it sounds good enough, but wouldn't you rather see the words than have me sound? I would sound a lot better on my mic, But what do you guys think? Let me know. Let me see what you guys have to say. Hi, Tell It to Elle. Hi, Donna. I obviously don't read chat when I'm reading this, but good to see you guys in here. What do you guys think? This helps, right? Like reading along and seeing the words. Okay, Amy likes it. Because if I wasn't showing this, I'd sound a lot better, but you know, don't know. Thank you guys for being here. I'm just going to grab some water, but let me know if any of you guys think, instead of seeing this, until I figure it out, like I said in the beginning, I will be emailing StreamYard to ask them why it's the default. It's never, you can change it. I don't know what the issue is. It's just giving me a hard time. Maybe I need to I don't know. They'll let me know. Okay, you like seeing the words tell it to Elle? Yeah. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, back. Hi, Mama. Okay, sound fine. Okay, guys. Thanks, Will. All right. Yeah, it's not up to my standards. I don't like it. I like my mic. It's a lot. It's like just sounds so clear. And if I knew where the mic was on this thing, I'd probably be able to sound a little better, but I don't. It's like, where is the mic? It must be so tiny. Okay, guys, ready? Let's start again. Should I put a goal in chat and go longer if we reach it? Maybe I should do that since we're like stopped right now. Okay, hold on. Let me see. Let me go in. And if I'll set a goal, let me go. I have to like mute because I'm really bad at that. Okay, let us set a goal, and instead of, we'll do a goal for like, okay, we'll set a goal. I've never set a goal. So if we get 10, at least 10, $5 super chats, I'll go for, as long as my voice sounds, what if no, we'll just do it anyways. I'll go for another 45 minutes past 2 hours. How does that sound? I'm writing. I'm like so bad at multitasking. I'm gonna have mistakes. Okay, let's see if this works. I've never set a goal before. Yay! Okay. All right. No biggie. We do, we don't, whatever happens. Okay, guys, ready? Here we go. Pullman, Washington, fall 2022. Cassie Hanzak is a WSU freshman majoring in psychology and minoring in criminology. Her largest class is the undergraduate criminal justice course with Professor John Snyder. With white hair and a mustache, Dr. Snyder is one of the most popular professors in the department. He's the reason Cassie wanted to come to WSU. She's excited. But as she sits attentively during Snyder's first class, Cassie encounters something off-putting. Rather, somewhat off-putting. The professor talks and talks for 40 long minutes, often calling on class members in his fun, benign way. A tall, thin guy with bulging eyes stands in front of the class, facing them the entire time. He has a coffee in his hand. He fiddles with it. Cassie wonders who the heck he is and why he's staring. The way he holds himself exudes not confidence exactly, but self-importance perhaps. Finally, Professor Snyder introduces him. This is your new TA, Brian Koberger. A couple of slides of a nice-looking family come onto the projector screen. Hi, I'm Brian, he tells the class. I'm here to continue my degree from Pennsylvania. I've got a master's in psychology. Here's my family. They look normal, Cassie thinks. Brian tells them he'll be here with Professor Snyder regularly, and he'll be grading their papers. Then he sits down. Why didn't Brian just sit at a desk in the front row like he was introduced? Cassie wonders. Her neighbor whispers to her that this guy is weird. Cassie smirks. Cassie sees Brian twice a week, every time she has a class with Professor Snyder. There are two TAs, both guys. One often has his laptop in front of him. Brian just sits there staring at the class, fiddling with his coffee cup. He doesn't say anything. It's strange. When he's communicative, Cassie notices, where he's communicative, Cassie notices, is in his grading. She can tell he puts a lot of thought into marking her papers. He gives her A's and writes a lot of commentary. She assumes that's because she's good at writing essays. She doesn't think she's a standout student, though. Until, that is, she hears from some of her female classmates that he's not so generous with their grades. And when he thinks they've gotten something wrong, he writes pages and pages explaining why. He is tough, they say. They think it's because they're women. Walking to class one time, a couple of classmates tell Cassie they've emailed Professor Snyder about it. Wow. Thanks, Cassie thinks. That's a step. Chapter 36, Pullman, Washington, October 2022. The weather hovers between fall and winter. It's bitterly cold, but the first snow has yet to arrive. After class, at around 5 p.m., Ben Roberts is milling around in Wilson Short Hall when he bumps into Brian, who offers to give him a lift home. Ben hesitates. He lives only a few minutes away, but he does need a ride, and he's curious. Ben wants to understand what underlies Brian's antagonistic behavior toward the women in class. So he makes a decision, and he accepts. Ben gets into Brian's white Hyundai Elantra. Brian keeps the car's interior clean and tidy, he notices. The conversation begins straightforwardly enough, at least in Ben's mind. They talk about some of the negative impacts of social media. Ben says he believes that social media encourages people to stay within bubbles of like-minded people. Dating app searches, for example, Ben points out, are designed algorithmically to keep men and women in certain groups. Brian gets personal. Are you seeing anyone? He asks. No, says Ben, and I'm fine with that. Ben doesn't add something he doesn't think Brian knows, and that's none of his business anyway. He's not straight. He wants to change the topic, but Brian wants to talk about women, what he thinks of them. He tells Ben that he believes in traditional gender roles, the implication being that their female colleagues are wasting their time in class and have no business pursuing master's degrees. Essentially, Brian believes that men should make money and women should be homemakers. Ben thinks the sentiment is tasteless as well as anarchic I'm not even able to say it, anarchostic, and odd for someone who's chosen to attend WSU, a progressive academic community where women outnumber men on the faculty. The department's head is a woman, Dr. Melanie Angela Newley, who is interested in feminist theories, no less, in researching comparative homicides, specifically violent homicides. She also has a wider interest in criminology theories, including feminist theorizations of crime. But Ben is even more horrified by what Brian says next. I can walk into any social gathering and get any girl I want. It's an extraordinary thing to say, and in Ben's mind, it puts Brian at creep level. And not just because Ben doubts, given Brian's weird physical appearance, that there's any truth to the boast. Ben doesn't rate himself highly as a specimen of physical attractiveness, but this guy, he looks more like Gollum than George Clooney, Ben thinks. He doesn't know that Brian has, in fact, seen a girl he wants and cannot get. The beautiful girl with long blonde hair and blue eyes. Brian continues talking, seemingly looking for a sign of agreement from Ben. When they arrive at Ben's place, he gets out of the car, hoping they're done. They're not. Brian asks to use his bathroom. He lingers in Ben's tiny sardine can studio apartment until 7:45 p.m. Both men remain standing for the conversation because Ben has only 2 chairs and one of them is piled high with stuff. Ben does not consider these hours well spent. As for Brian, he probably realized Ben wasn't the kindred spirit he was hoping for. Chapter 37, Pullman, Washington, September 23rd, 2022. The way the cohort hears it, this is what goes down in Professor Snyder's office. Dr. Snyder calls Brian in to talk about all the complaints. Women have emailed him saying the TA is grading the female students unfairly, and some of his cohort say his interruptions in class are misogynistic. Professor Snyder informs Brian of what's being said and suggests he change his ways. Stop interrupting the women, he tells the strange young man, or he says something along these lines. They're complaining. Stop writing them essays on their essays. It's offensive. Be generous and brief. A rumor goes around that Snyder makes the point that the undergraduates cannot be expected to have the same level of knowledge as Brian. Snyder is trying to be helpful, but apparently, or so they hear later, none of them was in the room, obviously. Brian's anger spills out of him. Fuck it. No more point pretending. Something sends him out of control. They deserve what they get, he says. The professor sees that Brian might be smart, but his Achilles heel is a big ego and a high opinion of himself. And there's something deeper that sets Brian off. Something ugly. Professor Snyder thinks he hears Brian mutter, "They don't belong in the classroom," but he can't be sure. So in his report on the, quote, altercation to the higher-ups on the faculty, he focuses on what he cannot ignore, the younger man's anger. A week or so later, on October 3rd, Department Chair Melanie Angela Newley and Graduate Director Dale Willits call Brian in to discuss his lack of norms of professional behavior. Professor Willits is there as a witness, so there's a record of what happens in the meeting, which it turns out will be needed. Brian listens, but he doesn't hear them. He's angry, defiant. He says he wants to meet his critics head on, have a discussion in class, explain his grading. He graded his students poorly because they didn't know the topic well. After he leaves, the faculty members are concerned. There's no way Brian's, quote, discussion with his students is likely to go the way he thinks it will. Chapter 38, Pullman, Washington, November 2022. Ben Roberts is still in shock about the delusional self-regard Brian expressed in the conversation that revealed his offensive, anachronistic view of gender roles. But increasingly, Brian's appearance becomes even more startling. Ben assumes that Brian is as stressed as they all are with finals looming. The workload is almost intolerable, and none of the students appears to be in perfect health. In class, Brian looks positively ill, like he's physically deteriorating. He looked like the Walking Dead, Ben said later. I mean, we're talking his eyes were just completely dark most of the time. He just looked gone. This wasn't just sleep deprivation, it was more serious, ongoing. He heard the rumors that Brian got reprimanded by Professor Snyder, but Brian doesn't offer any information. Ben goes to WSU's Student Care Network and fills out a form indicating his concern. He wants to send it to the administration. The school's website states that these reports can be made anonymously. But before pressing submit, Ben looks for the anonymous reporting function. He can't see that he has anonymity. He can't see that his anonymity will be protected for sure. Ben wants to help his exhausted classmate, but he doesn't want Brian searching out and finding the person who submitted the form. He doesn't want this coming back to him. There's something about this guy that is just too weird. So Ben deletes what he's typed, never imagining that the act of pushing the backspace button on his keyboard will come to haunt him. Chapter 39, Pullman, Washington, October 14th, 2022. Brian is driving his white 2015 Honda Elantra when he hears the siren. Damn, again? He pulls over and sits there as WSU police officer Isabel Luganis gets out of her cruiser and approaches him. Brian rolls down his window, looking as calm as possible, even though his heart is racing. Hello, officer. Officer Lugana politely greets Brian, wearing a body camera. She starts by telling him that the stop is being audio and video recorded. Then she says, I think you know why I stopped you. You ran the red light. What actually happened was I was stuck in the middle of the intersection, Brian answers. So I was forced to turn left. Yeah, I was behind you the whole time, Lugana says a little skeptically. She explains that she watched Brian enter the intersection illegally. She asks for his license, registration, insurance. Brian hands them over. He's cooperative. He apologizes profusely. Lunganis seems receptive, so Brian plows on, getting in deep. All that practice being verbal in class is paying off. He tells the cop that he's from a rural part of Pennsylvania, as his vehicle registration shows. And when it comes to pulling into an intersection like he just did, it never even occurred to me that was actually something wrong. Back home, you could drive like that with impunity. His performance works. He gets away with it, just like he did back in August. The officer lets him go with a warning. For Brian, it's likely an empowering moment. Back at DeSales in Professor Ramsland's class, he learned that a month before the day of retribution, Elliot Roger was paid a visit by police officers. They left with no clue that he was planning a mass murder. It's possible that Brian, too, can get away with anything he wants. Chapter 40, Pullman, Washington, Fall 2022. She asked Brian, her neighbor, to install a home surveillance system. She noticed that her home in the Steptoe Village apartments has been broken into and various items were moved around, but nothing was stolen. Brian is always floating around the place. It's where a lot of the graduate students live, and they've gotten friendly. And she knows he's into tech because he's always talking about how good he is with computers. She can see him on his computer at his window late into the night. So instead of going to the police, she goes to Brian, who agrees to help place cameras around her home. He could not be more helpful, and the new cameras work really well. She's grateful until she looks at the cameras and at what she can see from her phone. There's been a rumor that Brian followed a woman student to her car. This technology is smart, but so simple. Anyone with the password can log on and see in her apartment. Anyone. But there's only one person other than her who knows the password. Brian. Her mind races. He seemed off lately. Strange. He asked her to go out for coffee and seemed mad when she said no. Really mad. She changes her password. She has no idea that just 2 months after this, her brief encounters with Brian will become a newspaper story that goes viral. She has no idea that she will need to shield her identity, hide from the media and the public. No idea that her experience will make her a potential witness in a murder trial. That Chief Jenkins will say that investigators believe there was likely a connection between Brian's, quote, work on her security and what happened at 1122 King Road. She has no idea of who the weird guy with the bulging eyes really is or of what is about to happen. Chapter 41, Pullman, Washington, November 2nd, 2022. Less than a month after their previous meeting with Brian, so the cohort hears, Graduate Director Dale Willits and Department Chair Melanie Angela Newley are once again confronting Brian about his behavior. There are no friendly suggestions this time. Doctors Willits and Newley tell Brian what he already knows. Short of a miracle, he'll be fired. The cohort hears that the discussion about grading had not gone well. Women had later complained to Dr. Snyder and said Brian had stared at them, that he'd positioned himself by the door and they'd had to get uncomfortably close to him to exit the room. One suggested he followed her to her car. As if Brian is so pissed, they'd be lucky to get close to him. He has stopped showing up to teach. So 2 weeks ago, John Snyder had formally notified Brian he had failed to meet expectations as a TA. The students assume that Professor Newley wants to give students the benefit of the doubt, and that is why she and Professor Willits are giving Brian a chance. Today, Doctors Newley and Willits suggest an improvement plan for Brian, a way for him to show them he can lose the misogyny and genuinely behave professionally at an institution that expects that of both students and teachers. This improvement plan, they agree, will be emailed to Brian, and they will meet again in a month to see how it's going. Brian listens. Brian's career as a graduate student is over. In this room now, they're just going to go through the motions. His bubble is bursting. His dream of a new life, a new persona, is being cut short. Professor Snyder emails the plan to him the next day. It contains words like courtesy and respect, the kind of thing he considers politically correct bullshit. So they want change. On page 118 of his manifesto, Elliot Rodger wrote that he planned to carry out his Day of Retribution scheme in November. At first, he planned to do it on Halloween because, he said, it was the ultimate party night. There would literally be thousands of people crowded together who I could kill with ease, and the goal was kill everyone in Isla Vista, to utterly destroy that wretched town. But then I saw there were too many cops walking around. The Day of Retribution would have to be a normal party weekend. So I set it for sometime during November 2013. In the early hours of November 13th, 2022, police allege Brian leaves his home in Pullman. At 2:47 a.m., his phone shows he's moving southeast of his Pullman home. 1 minute later, his phone stops reporting to the network or any network and doesn't come online again until 4:47 a.m. Between those times, Corporal Brett Payne alleges a masked intruder fitting Koberger's description enters 1122 King Road. As they're sleeping or relaxing in what they assume is the safety of their own home, Maddie Mogan, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin are fatally stabbed. What no one knows is why. Part 3, the first 6 weeks. Chapter 42. Moscow, Idaho, November 13th, 2022. As soon as she wakes up and sees the half-light shining through the slit of a window in Bethany's bedroom, Dylan remembers him. The firefighter, his bulging blue eyes that caught hers, his thick, dark eyebrows, and the mask. Her dreamlike memory of the night before begins coming back to her in hazy snippets. She remembers falling into a half-sleep, half-stupor. At around 2 a.m., she'd heard everyone come home. Kaylee and Maddie had chatted on the couch in the living room. Late last night, she heard the girls say the name of Kaylee's ex. Jack. Dylan now thinks Maddie and Kaylee stayed up for a while. She heard them stomp up the stairs to the top floor. And then she thought she'd heard that cry. Was it Kaylee? There's someone here. Given her horrific haze, Dylan can't be sure of the timing, but she thought it sounded like Kaylee. She thought it sounded like Kaylee had said those words just moments after going up the stairs. Then Dylan had opened her door and peered out. Nothing. She thought she could hear Xana moving around, doubtless getting a food delivery like she always did after a big night out. It wasn't unusual for people to pop in and out of King Road, even at 4 a.m. It was a party house, and people knew to come in through the sliding doors by the kitchen. Everyone in their circle, even their parents, knew that the lock was broken. You just had to lift the mechanism up and the door released. So Dylan went back to bed. But as she lay down, she thought she heard Xana crying. She opened the door again, and she thought she heard an unmistakable male voice say, "It's okay. I'm going to help you." Then there was a thud, a whimper, and Murphy began barking and barking. Murphy never did that in the middle of the night. Dylan shut her door, freaked out, her heart thudding. She waited some more. She opened the door a third time, and then she saw him, the firefighter. Or that's what she thought he must be, since he wore a mask and was clad head to toe in black. He had something in his hands. A vacuum, maybe? Was there a fire? Was there smoke? She was confused. He was walking toward the back sliding doors, their gazes locked for a split second. Dylan was momentarily frozen, but she quickly closed her door and locked it, heart pounding, waiting for further sounds. She remembered being scared and looking around her room for her taser. The battery was dead. She listened and listened at the door, but after that, there was just silence. Whoever he was, whatever he'd been doing, he was gone. Dylan wondered in that moment if she'd gone crazy. How wasted was she? That was when she reached out to Bethany and the others. And eventually, after getting no reply for 10 minutes and seeing that her phone was dying, she gulped, opened her door again, and raced down to Bethany's room, where she locked the door and climbed into bed with her best friend. Her other housemates must be sleeping, she told herself, and she fell into an uneasy slumber. When she woke up around 8 a.m., early for a Sunday, Bethany was already awake. She'd spoken to her parents and told them about Dylan's panic, paranoia mostly, the night before. Dylan has had crazy thoughts before when completely drunk, so at first she thinks it must have been a nightmare, which now has passed, just like the dark. She and Bethany lie in bed, both on their phones. Dylan tools around on Instagram and then on Indeed. At 10:23 a.m., she texts Maddie to see if she's up. No biggie, she thinks, when there's no answer. But the clock ticks on, and as Dylan sends messages on Instagram and Snapchat, there's still no noise from upstairs. At 11:29 a.m., she texts Kaylee. Still nothing. Now the panic from last night sets in again. Dylan turns to Bethany. What if whatever Dylan saw was real? Bethany calls Jenna McClure, one of their besties. She says she'll come over. And Dylan decides to phone Emily, her big, the person she trusts the most on campus. Surely Emily will fix this. She has to. Chapter 43, Moscow, Idaho, November 13th, 2022. Emily Allant is at her apartment in the building next door having breakfast with Hunter Johnson, Josie, and Lyndon when she answers Dylan's call. Can you come over? Dylan asks her big sister. I don't really know if I was dreaming or not, but I think there is a man here and I'm really scared. Can you come check out the house? Emily is amused. It's not the first time Dylan has said crazy stuff after she's had a few drinks. Should I bring my pepper spray? She teases. I need to say something really quick. Did they make a mistake? Because literally this chapter was verbatimly written early on, like part 1. This whole thing it's really weird. Like, did they just, like, literally we just read, like, all of this we had read earlier yesterday, and now this. But okay, I'm just going to continue and pretend that it's supposed to be like this. Okay. Should I bring my pepper spray? She teases. Emily takes the time to find a sweatshirt before trotting toward the King Road house. But Hunter, driven perhaps by some sixth sense, is ahead of her. He enters the house and passes Dylan and Bethany, who are barefoot, hands over their mouths, crying. They wait while he goes up the stairs and heads to the passage that will take him to Xana's room. The first sign that something is very wrong is that Xana's door is cracked open a few inches. Xana never sleeps with her door open. But Hunter soon sees that Xana isn't in bed asleep. She's lying on the floor as if she'd fallen backward into the room. Ethan is motionless in the bed behind her. There are rivers of blood. Adrenaline takes over, as does a strong protective instinct. He goes back down to Dylan and Bethany. Call 911, he says, and stay outside. He says as calmly as he can. He turns and heads back upstairs, where he goes into the kitchen and gets a kitchen knife. Is the person who did this still here? He heads across the hall back to Xana's room. When he's at her doorway, he hears someone coming up the stairs. He turns around and sees Emily coming toward him. He stops her, putting a hand on her shoulders and talking as softly as he can. You cannot go in there, he tells her. Emily doesn't understand. He tries again. Emily, I don't think Xana's going to wake up, he says firmly. And Emily stops moving. She stops speaking. She's rooted in shock. I'm going to go in and take their pulses, he says. Eventually, she turns and heads back down the stairs. Hunter goes into Xana's bedroom. He takes Xana's pulse, knowing that he won't feel a beat. He doesn't. And then Hunter goes over to the bed to his best friend, Ethan, lying there facing the wall, peacefully but lifelessly. Again, there's no pulse. He now walks around the room, checking the closets. There's no one there. In a trance, he walks out of the bedroom, knife in hand, and stands in the living room. Meanwhile, the others are outside on the phone with the emergency responder. The operator is asking them to stop passing the phone around, but in their panic, that's all they can think to do. Bethany and Dylan are too upset to be intelligible, so Josie tries to give the address as clearly as she can, explaining that one of the roommates is unconscious. One of the roommates has passed out and she was drunk last night and she's not waking up. Oh, and they saw a man in their house last night. Dylan takes the phone back and tries to start in about what she saw at 4 a.m., but the operator cuts her off. She wants to know what is happening right now. Is someone passed out right now? There's a pause as they call for Hunter inside the house, who hollers back to them. She's not waking up, Dylan tells the operator. Hunter comes out and takes the phone from Dylan. Is she breathing? The operator asks. No, Hunter says, with all the calm he can muster. Then he hands the phone back to Dylan and goes to wait out inside. The operator tells Dylan that she's summoned help and stay on the line. She asks Dylan if she can find a defibrillator. Dylan asks the others. None of them knows what a defibrillator is. None of them, other than Hunter, knows anything. But wordlessly, they're each screaming the same questions. Why is Xana not waking up? Where's Ethan? Why is Hunter Johnson telling them to stay outside? And what about Kaylee and Maddie? Huddled on the sidewalk, dressed in their nightwear, the friends have no idea whether Kaylee and Maddie are inside the house. They do know from their location sharing apps that the girls' phones are there, but they also know that neither is answering. So we also learned from that their phones were not dead, that Maddie and Kaylee's, we learned yesterday their phones weren't dead because it was saying that when Dylan was calling, it was ringing. And when she was texting, the messages were getting delivered. It didn't say they weren't delivered. So that's an interesting tidbit. Okay, sorry. I digress. Chapter 44. Moscow, Idaho, November 13th, 2022. They are still on the phone with 911 operator when the first patrol car arrives. The man who gets out, Patrol Officer Mitch Nunez, is 22, the same age as Hunter Johnson. Nunez joined the Moscow PD only a year ago. The kids look at him, slightly stunned to see someone their age in an officer's uniform. Nunez is expecting a routine situation. He asks Hunter Johnson, who is standing just inside, still holding the kitchen knife, to come with him to show him the unconscious person. He's ready to administer CPR. But right from the get-go, something tells him this isn't the usual case of a student who is over-imbibed. Hunter Johnson doesn't let go of the knife. He takes Nunez up to Xana's room. He shows him Xana and Ethan. Nunez takes their pulses. They're dead, clearly the victims of a brutal stabbing. Nunez can see that in addition to other wounds, Xana's fingers are almost severed. It looks like she put up a fight against someone advancing into the room. Ethan looks as if he died while sleeping. He's on his side in the bed, facing the wall, stabbed in the buttocks and the neck. Nunez takes out his gun. He might be the department baby, but he knows how to follow protocols from his time in the Army and his police training. He knows that while he waits for backup, he needs to look around for a perpetrator. His first priority is to clear the residence of any threat. His second is to get medical aid to anyone who needs it. Nunez casts his eyes around. There's no sign of a perpetrator. And it's clear that Xana and Ethan are beyond requiring medical assistance. He calls for backup. He takes Hunter down to the living room. Then he makes his way up to the top of the house, his body cam recording every second of his movements and the horrific visual of what he sees. Upstairs on the top floor, Nunez finds a dog, a golden doodle, in the room on the left. He enters the room on the right, Maddie's room, and sees two young women, Kaylee and Maddie, lying in Maddie's bed, also stabbed to death. Even before he takes their pulses, he knows they're dead. Nunez hasn't seen anything as horrific as this in his short time at Moscow PD. The last murder in town happened long before he joined the force. 2 other patrol officers, Corbin Smith and Eric Warner, are on their way, but Nunez knows he needs to go up the chain of command fast. This is way serious. Chapter 45, Moscow, Idaho, November 13th, 2022. It's 12:30 p.m. on what ought to be a lazy Sunday, but someone is shaking Hunter Chapin awake. Cooper, he says groggily to the guy who climbed up the ladder to his sleeping loft and is prodding him. Cooper Atkinson, an older Sig Chi brother who recruited him and Ethan, is standing there visibly agitated. Hunter, wake up. There are cops on King Road. Huh? Hunter doesn't see what the big deal is. The King Road house is a notoriously party house because of the deck in the back. The cops are always being called by a neighbor angered by the noise. Hunter sees that the university has sent out a campus-wide alert about an unconscious person, but he still isn't worried. Maybe Xana or one of the other roommates over-imbibed on game day. It wouldn't be the first time someone passed out from drinking. But Cooper drags Hunter out of bed, and the two make the short walk across Lower Field to the house. As they get near, Hunter can see their usual gang sitting on the sidewalk. Emily, Hunter Johnson, Josie, Lyndon, Dylan, Bethany. Where's Ethan? He wonders. Oh, he answers his own question. Ethan is probably helping the cops inside. He'll be helping whoever is in difficulty. That would be typical of Ethan. Xana's not on the sidewalk either, so maybe the person who needs help is Ethan's own girlfriend. Hunter scarcely notices that Cooper leaves his side once he catches up to his group of friends on the sidewalk, because there's something in his friends' faces that tells him that the world has just ended. They don't speak. They just hug him. Hunter is afraid to say anything, but then Hunter Johnson gently motions for him to follow him to a nearby dumpster. When they're alone, Hunter Chapin plucks up the courage to ask, what's going on? Like, where's Ethan? Is he helping whoever's inside? Hunter Johnson speaks softly. Ethan's not here anymore. Hunter Chapin doesn't comprehend the words. What do you mean Ethan's not here anymore? Like, where did he go? Your brother's dead. Dead? Hunter Chapin can't feel anything. How can this be happening? How on earth can Ethan, whom he saw last in the early hours of this morning, be dead? Hunter Johnson continues. I don't know. We think Xana, Ethan, Kaylee, and Maddie were all murdered last night. Murdered? Ethan, Xana, Kaylee, and Maddie? Hunter Chapin is so dizzy he has to sit down. Ordinarily, he'd tell the other Hunter he's out of his mind to stop with such a cruel joke. But ordinarily, there isn't yellow police tape around the house and a swarm of cops moving in and out and not speaking to the little circle of sobbing kids. For maybe 15 minutes, Hunter Chapin is mute. They all are. No one knows what to say. He can't process this. He can't deal. He has spent almost every minute of his entire life with his triplet brother. Ethan has been his leader, his role model. His brother has entered every room, every game, every contest, one step ahead of him, but also with his hand stretched out toward him. Ethan is Hunter's entire world. Now he's gone. Murdered? He has no idea what to do, what to say to his sister, his mom, his dad. He doesn't want to speak to the cops, and it seems they don't want to speak to the kids. The police avert their gaze as they go in and out of the house. Eventually, Hunter speaks. For the first time in his life, he has to dig deep and find Ethan's spirit within him. Chapter 46, Moscow, Idaho, November 13th, 2022. I need a phone, Hunter Chapin says. Mine isn't working. Hunter Johnson hands him his. He calls his sister. No answer. It will emerge that Maisie is showering, and when she comes out and sees a missed call from Hunter Johnson, she doesn't assume that it's anything urgent. Why should she? But then he calls again. Weird. She answers, "What do you want, Hunter?" But it isn't the Hunter she was expecting. It's her brother. And he sounds strange. "Maisie, you need to come to Xana's." Maisie thinks this is also weird. Why? "You just need to come." Maisie is kind of pissed. "I don't have a car." "Find one." Maisie wakes up Reagan, one of her roommates, and asks her to drive her to Xana's. But they can only get as far as the bottom of the hilly slope on which 1122 King Road sits. The whole block is cordoned off. Police are everywhere. Maisie gets out and walks toward her brother Hunter and the usual friend group. They are all crying. Her brother appears to be on the phone. Maisie thinks her stomach might fall out of her. What the hell happened? Someone? Anyone? Silence. Maisie is filled with rage, with good reason. Why are they all just shaking their heads and not speaking? "Someone tell me, Jesus Christ," she yells. Her brother hangs up the phone and approaches her. "Ethan and Xana didn't wake up." Maisie snorts. "What do you mean they didn't wake up? Did someone drug them, poison them? It doesn't make sense." Maisie still doesn't think it sounds that bad, but her friend's reactions nag at her. Bethany is crying so loudly that it feels like her life depends on it. Dylan is positively screaming and shouting something like, "I can't believe someone would do this." Maisie has never much liked Dylan. She's histrionic in Maisie's view, and Maisie is irritated by it. "Shut the fuck up," Maisie says to Dylan. "It's really annoying." Why do they all want to hug her? Maisie sits down with them. She sees Ava Wood, a blonde Afy, who lives in an apartment building next to the house, putting a blanket over Emily's shoulders and comforting her. Jack Decor, who Maisie knows is Kaylee's ex-boyfriend, is also with them. He seems confused, dazed. When he says he's Kaylee's ex, the cops seem to want to talk to him. They stick him in a cop car, but only for a few minutes. Maisie hasn't thought about Kaylee and Maddie, Xana's roommates. She doesn't know them really. She's focused on Ethan and Xana. What's happened to them? The group just sits there, watching the cops, waiting, hoping for an answer that is better than the one they fear. Suddenly, it's 1:04 p.m. All their phones ping. It's another campus-wide alert, much worse than the first. "Moscow PD investigating a homicide on King Road, near campus. Suspect is not known at this time. Stay away from the area and shelter in place." Oh my God. The group collectively bursts into fresh tears. Maisie's struggling to grasp the reality of the words on the screen, but Emily loses it. The young cop has to come out of the house, and she lets him have it. "How dare you send out a vandal alert before we know where our friends are?" she screams at him. The officer replies with a stony calm that he did not feel as he delivered the grim official life-changing news. "All 4 of your friends are inside the house, and they're all dead." Chapter 47, Mount Vernon, Washington, November 13th, 2022. Stacy Chapin is filling her cart in the produce aisle at Hagen when she sees her friend Barb. It's a lazy Sunday. Her husband Jim is on his way back to the tiny condo in nearby LaConner they bought after they sold their big house in Mount Vernon. He's been at his workshop at the sawmill outside of Coeur d'Alene, a mammoth 6-hour-plus drive away. Jim left at 8 a.m., so Stacy has plenty of time for a catch-up. Stacy puts her basket down to exchange news with Barb. When her phone rings and she sees it's Maisie calling, She figures no big deal. She'll call her back when she's finished talking. Although, as she thinks about it, it is unusual for Maisie to call. Normally, she texts her mother and they arrange a time to talk. Of all of her kids, the quickest to communicate is Ethan, from whom she's yet to hear this morning, which is odd. She texted Ethan a few hours ago asking him for photos from Maisie's formal last night, but he hasn't responded. Ordinarily, he's the first of her kids to reach out in the mornings, no matter how heavy the night before. And usually when she texts him, he answers right away, no matter the hour. It's like there's a psychic bond between them. Anyhow, no big deal. Stacy carries on talking. When she's finished, she sees that Maisie has called her multiple times. Now she's trying her again. This time Stacy picks up. Maisie? She asks. But it isn't Maisie. It's Hunter calling from his sister's phone. He's on speaker. Stacy can hear wailing in the background. Ethan's not here anymore, Hunter says. Stacy doesn't understand. We'll go get him. Hunter tries again. No, you don't understand. He and Xana aren't here. Stacy is growing impatient. Like Maisie, she doesn't suffer fools. So get in the car and go find them. What is that? Crying? Hunter says, Mom, you don't understand. They're not on this earth anymore. Stacy doesn't believe what her son is telling her. She abandons her cart in the aisle, walks out of the store, and calls Jim from her car. He's just dropping into Saget Valley. He's almost home. I think something's happened to Ethan and he's been killed, she says. Jim doesn't understand. He can't process. But he knows one thing, and so does his wife. Whatever's happened, they have to get to Hunter and Maisie. Right now, they have to get to their kids. Chapter 48, LaConner, Washington, November 13th, 2022. Stacy and Jim Chapin meet at their condo in LaConner, Washington, and get into Jim's black Chevy Tahoe. They have a 6-hour drive ahead of them, and the Sunday afternoon traffic sucks. Hunter and Maisie call and tell them they're being asked to go to the police station and that they'll be handing over their phones to the cops, which means that for most of that drive, Stacy and Jim cannot reach their kids. Stacy feels as if she'll burst. Why aren't they hearing anything from the police, from the university, from anyone? She phones the emergency cell number for the university that parents of incoming students are given. She chews out the person who answers, asking why no one from the school is communicating with her about her son. The voice on the other end says that's because there's a protocol with emergencies, and the police are the ones in charge of situations like this. And perhaps the only time in the aftermath of her son's death, Stacy momentarily loses her cool. That's not good enough, she yells. She has no idea to whom she's talking. In that moment, she's not interested. But being Stacy Chapin, soon she wants to find him and apologize. For now, she just wants the snarled traffic to move. All she wants is to get to Hunter and Maisie and tell them that no matter what has happened to Ethan, they're still family, and they're going to be fine. Stacy, the mother hen, is going to make sure of this. She's going to be there for Maisie and Hunter. She's going to be there for Ethan, whatever has happened. She's going to be there for Jim. She doesn't have a clue as to how they're going to get through this, but she's going to do her damnedest to protect her brood. Family first. All the plans she and Jim had traveling, retiring, those belong to the past. They are quite gone. Hunter and Maisie need to hear one message from her. Whatever happened to Ethan, they are alive and they're going to be fine. She will make sure of it. It's what Ethan would want. How are we doing? Did we make the goal? Let me see what we're on part 3. Let's see where part 4 is. Should I go for 45 minutes? If we made the goal, I'm definitely going to. I don't think we're gonna get to part 4. Let me look. Sorry for stopping. You guys, we should just do it, right? We didn't meet the goal. Thank you guys. I'll thank you guys at the end. We didn't meet the goal, but let's just power through another 45. What do you guys think? You ready? We can't stop now. We're on the 13th. Okay, some water. Okay, ready, guys? Chapter 49. Clarkson, Idaho, November 13th, 2022. What a beautiful Sunday. Blaine Eccles, the UI dean of students, is nearing the Costco in Clarkson, near Lewiston, a 40-minute drive from Moscow. He's admiring the morning. He and his wife, Shelley, are doing the grocery run they normally do every 6 weeks. He's seen a vandal alert about an unconscious person, and he hopes whoever needed first aid received it and is okay. More than likely an alcohol-related mishap after the game. Not unusual, but as they're about to pull into the Costco parking lot, his phone rings. It's Tyson Barrett. Blaine, says the police captain, we've got 4 dead bodies and we think they may be students. What? Eccles gestures to his wife to go into the Costco. He sits in the car and speaks to the captain. We don't have it confirmed yet, but given the proximity of where they are to campus at King Road and their ages, it's a good chance they are. Call me back as soon as you know anything, says Eccles. Just like the police, Eccles has a checklist of what to do and whom to call. His first call is to University of Idaho president, my favorite, Scott Green. If you know, you know. His line is busy, so Eccles suspects someone else. Tyson probably is giving him the news. Then he calls the provost, Tory Lawrence, and informs him. Jake Nichols, the director of campus safety, is temporarily unreachable because it will emerge he's on a boat on a river. Eccles leaves a voicemail asking Greg Lambeth, the director of the counseling center, to phone him as soon as possible. Lambeth, it turns out, is hiking in the woods. But the small group of people he can reach have an impromptu conference call, then decide to convene ASAP on campus. Eccles goes into Costco and retrieves Shelley. He asks her to drive so he can set about putting things in order. Eccles is trying to stay one step ahead of what to do, what to set in motion. Barrett mentioned that the manner of the deaths was suspicious, but Eccles has no clue as to how the 4 students, if indeed they're students, died. He wonders if it's drug-related. More likely, he thinks, they were shot. So when a bewildered, irate Stacy Chapin reaches him, he genuinely has nothing new to tell her. He doesn't know what happened, but even if he did, he explains, it's up to the police, not him, to talk to her. He notes that she doesn't ask his name, that in her panic, she may not be aware it's him. Eccles does not know Stacy Chapin, but he knows who she is. When you're the dean, you notice when triplets enroll. Doesn't happen every day, nor does a mass murder. Eccles started at UI in 2015. So he wasn't here for the previous horrific campus tragedy in 2011, when Katie Benoit was murdered by her professor, who then holed up in the Best Western and, when the cops tried to bash down the door, turned the gun on himself. Now, as the administrators huddle in a conference room, they have a whole host of questions to think about, like security and how to beef that up, whether to cancel classes, and if so, for how long? For Eccles, the priority is student care. He needs to find out where the kids lived, whether they were members of a Greek house so he can reach out. Tyson Barrett continues phoning him intermittently, and Eccles tells the captain that he will cooperate as best as he can with any investigation. But what no one in that room of university leaders considers is something that will become a problem for Chief Fry and his officers. By deciding to cancel classes, they're effectively sending home thousands of possible witnesses, key people the police need to speak to. Fry later shakes his head in expiration. Why am I? He's exasperated, okay, at this, wishing the school had asked him first. But part of being a cop is knowing that you can control only so much. The university is not answerable to him, and they need to make their decision for their reasons, not his. Fortunately, there's another law enforcement agency that has branches all over the country and can get out of towners easily. Fry knows he'll be calling it soon. The Federal Bureau of Investigation. Chapter 15. Pullman, Washington, November 13th, 2022. It's lunchtime, and Evan Ellis, the news director of Pullman Radio, has just finished up in the studio. He's prepping for his Monday morning show when local photographer Jeff Crimmins calls him. You listening to the scanner? Crimmins is at his in-laws' house, and they keep their scanner set to the police frequency. Stopped when I left the studio, Ellis replies. Why? You're not going to believe this. We got 4 bodies over in Moscow. 1122 King. I'm listening to it right now. The cops just walked in. The volunteers, fire, and EMT are saying there's blood everywhere. Meet you there, says Ellis. With decades of experience between them, there's no need to have a conversation about the seriousness of the situation. Ellis and Crimmins get to the King Road residence within 15 minutes. A patrol car is barricading the entrance to the block, and tape is around the perimeter. Ellis can see a group of 4 or 5 kids sitting on the sidewalk in a circle, all sobbing uncontrollably. He's never heard wailing like this. There's a terror and tragedy in those cries. Ellis has been to and reported from every major crime scene in the area over the past 20 years. In 2007, he even arrived at an active shooting in Moscow. Outside the sheriff's office, Lee Newbill, a police officer, was killed, and 2 others, including Sheriff's Deputy Sergeant Brandon Jordan, were injured. As a journalist, Ellis practices old-style reporting. He has values that, in the coming days and weeks, prove vanishingly rare. He believes that off the record means off the record, and that sources are to be protected. He also believes that some people have a right to privacy, not to have cameras shoved in their faces, and these kids, in this moment, should not be interviewed. He deliberately turns his phone away from them and even tries to block the noise of the bawling as he begins live streaming from the scene on Facebook. All right, I'm going to go fast here. We've got a sketchy signal where I'm at. Homicide investigation in Moscow. He tells his listeners where he is. Moscow police on scene. University of Idaho has issued a vandal alert saying that the Moscow PD has a homicide investigation here at one of these apartments. Suspect is not known at this time. University of Idaho alert states that people need to stay away from this area and to shelter in place. That is the alert from the University of Idaho, is to shelter in place. That's what the vandal alert said. With this homicide investigation here near campus. Suspect not known at this time. This is Evan Ellis. He stops streaming when he sees a cop come out of 1122 King. He recognizes the officer, Captain Tyson Barrett. Unlike the kids, Barrett is not off limits. So Ellis approaches. Barrett lets him because he knows that Ellis knows the Moscow cops. They trust him. He's never betrayed their confidence, and when they've told him stuff that is for background only, it stayed that way. So Barrett is happy to answer Ellis honestly when the journalist asks, "Is there a shooter at large?" Barrett shakes his head. "No threat to the public," the captain says. "We're going to put that out there." But Ellis is skeptical. Sure, he doesn't see anyone walking around looking like they want to attack anyone, but still, really, Tyson, are you sure? Barrett says he is. Ellis points at the house. So is everybody in there? His question is implicit. Is the murderer in there dead too? But at that, Barrett shuts down. I'm not going to say anything else. After years of dealing with these guys, Ellis knows better than to push. But questions race through his mind. Are we talking murder? Are we talking guns? What are we talking about? Holy hell, he thinks as he walks away. He calls Chief Fry. Chief, Tyson's going with, quote, no threat to the public. Are you sure? The university is saying shelter in place. Fry is quick to answer. We are going with no threat. That's what we've got right now. There's a pause. Hey, Evan, Fry says, speaking to his friend as much as to a journalist. Tamp this down. Fry doesn't want chaos on the campus. That isn't helpful to anyone. The police are going to need calm and order so they can get to witnesses and proceed with their investigation. Fry knows that people are just as safe now as they were 24 hours before the murders. Common sense, not just his years of training and experience, tells him that when someone comes for you in your bed with a knife in the middle of the night, it's personal. Whoever did this is not likely to strike again randomly. What Fry can't explain right now is why 4 victims were knifed and why 2 other roommates were not. But he knows that there will be an answer, and they will find it. They always do. He hasn't had an unsolved case once in his years of being a cop. Ellis knows that Fry and Barrett are as good at their jobs as any cops you'll find anywhere. Better, probably, because there's a pride and sense of ownership that comes with policing a small town, something that likely doesn't happen in the big cities. But Ellis also knows that the police are going to have another problem while they're hunting for whoever stabbed 4 students to death in their bedrooms. And he's worried that these cops, as good as they are, aren't prepared for that aspect, namely publicity. Everything about this crime, the age of the victims, the proximity of the house to the school, the fact that there were being 4 of them, the fact that they were in the safety of their own beds, the fact that there appear to be survivors in the house, the fact that this is Moscow, safe little Moscow. All of this means that this story is going to be big. Way bigger than the town's mass homicide in 2015 when John Lee, the troubled son of a beloved local couple, shot and killed his adoptive mother, his landlord, and a restaurant manager and injured 1 other person. Way bigger than the sordid saga of Katie Benoit and her professor. Bigger than the 2 Wells brothers gunning down a member of the Vandals football team. And bigger than Charles Capone strangling his wife and dumping her body in the river. The Moscow cops are going to face questions from journalists who don't know them. Journalists who will ask, not unreasonably, how the police can be certain the public is safe if they don't have a suspect in custody. That's why he's pushing here. But in all his years of reporting, he's never gotten in the way of an investigation. And he's not going to start now. So he taps the live stream button again on his phone. All right, Evan Ellis with you, back again at the scene of a homicide investigation in Moscow. We're near campus. You can see the unit here where the investigation is taking place, 1122 King Road. And we've got the police tape here around the scene. He tells his audience that Captain Tyson Baird of the Moscow Police Department specifically said that there was no threat to the public right now. Although the University of Idaho had sent out a campus-wide alert telling people to stay away from the area and shelter in place, The key here, he goes on, is it's Moscow Police Department investigating. They do not believe this case represents a threat to the public at this time. And again, that's different from what we've heard from the University of Idaho on their alert. It's possible, he says, that the university is being overly cautious, and he reiterates that the police are saying there's no threat to the public at this time. What exactly that means, you can speculate, he says. We're not going to necessarily do that. Homicide investigation here again in Moscow, King Road. Here is New Greek Row right back here. University of Idaho campus here. Ellis's hand is shaking. So is his voice. In this moment, he and Jeff Crimmins are the only members of the media there. But he knows that within hours, that will change, and he worries that the police narrative he has repeated several times, that there's no threat to the public, will change as well. Chapter 51, Moscow, Idaho, November 13th, 2022. Jeff Kernoodle is headed on the long journey back to his home in Arizona after family weekend. He's feeling justifiably elated. It hasn't been a straightforward path parenting his two daughters, Jasmine and Xana. Their mom, Kara, has been in and out of jail for years. When Jasmine and Xana were little, Jeff got full custody. It was not easy being a single dad, juggling children and a job, and more recently, a move from Post Falls, Idaho to Arizona. But he and his daughters are as tight as can be, and his daughters are tight with each other. He smiles when he thinks about the fact that they're just 15 miles apart. Jasmine at WSU, Xana at UI. Two beautiful young women, full of life, laughter, hope, and love for each other. Jasmine is a rising senior, studying business marketing and digital technology. Xana has mentioned wanting a career in digital marketing or maybe sales, but she's always been the more carefree of the two. The one who laughingly has always said she has no plans for the future. But Jeff noticed this past weekend that she's changing. She wanted him to meet her boyfriend's parents, Jim and Stacy. Nice people. She's never had a serious boyfriend before, and Jeff can tell she's nuts about Ethan. So nuts, she's thinking about a future with him. Why, though, did she not phone earlier? He thought they might have brunched today, but he didn't hear from her, so he hit the road. His phone rings. It's Jasmine. She's crying. Dad, you need to turn around. His heart drops. Meet me at Xana's house, is all she says. When he gets there, it's cordoned off and swarming with police officers. Jeff tells them he's Xana's dad, and an officer asks if he and Jasmine can please follow him to the station. When they get there, they're ushered into a room where an officer gently tells them they have 4 victims of a homicide and that Xana is one. Jeff is speechless. What can you say to such a thing? There aren't words, just tears and agony. Chapter 52, Rathdrum, Idaho, November 13th, 2022. It's lunchtime, and Steve Goncalves is exactly where he likes to be on football Sundays. In his living room, in front of the TV, watching the Seahawks game, surrounded by his noisy family. He moved to Rathdrum, Idaho, because he wanted to make life easier for his wife, Christy. The cost of living was cheaper. The state was safer than California. He wanted her to quit her job as an accountant at Chevron and be a full-time mom if she wanted to. She didn't, because that's Christy for you. Independent, strong, a great role model. She decided to become a teacher. Steve's a proud girl dad. 4 of his 5 kids are daughters, but they all love football. Their cousin Bryce is hoping to get recruited by a college team. An extra bonus today is that his eldest daughter, Olivia, will soon be home for Thanksgiving. She lives in LA where her husband, Robbie Stevenson, works in post-production on the series Ted Lasso. But that morning, there was a scare. Steve just discovered he has Ramsay Hunt syndrome, an inflammation of the facial nerve caused by chickenpox virus. Olivia is 22 weeks pregnant with her third child, and Steve is worried about possibly being contagious. So he and Christy are on and off the phone to Olivia, figuring out if it's safe for her to visit. So when they call Olivia yet again, she doesn't sound surprised to hear from them. But then Christy says, I think something's happened to Kaylee. They were not expecting Kaylee back from Moscow until Tuesday. She had gone to show Maddie her new Range Rover and hang out with her friends. But Kaylee's younger sisters, Autumn and Aubrey, have been getting strange calls from Kaylee's friends about police being at King Road. Something weird is happening there. An unconscious person. Then there's a vandal alert about a homicide. They try Kaylee. It goes to voicemail. They try Maddie. It rings, but no answer. They try Jack. No answer. But they start to see photographs of the King Road house coming online. It's surrounded by police tape. The Goncalves are flummoxed. Where are the police? Why hasn't anyone said anything to them? Olivia phones Maddie's mom, Karen Laramie, to ask if she's heard anything. Karen says she's already on her way to Moscow. She too has received alarming messages, but nothing from the police. She promises she's going to bring both girls home. But Karen doesn't get to the King Road house. The police reach her when she's almost to Moscow and tell her to go to the police station. The Goncalveses, meanwhile, are sitting, waiting, hoping, praying that Kaylee and Maddie are okay. It's another few hours between 4 and 5 p.m. before the police show up on their doorstep to deliver the shocking news that Kaylee is dead, and so are Maddie and 2 others. When Steve and Christy ask how and why, the officers have no answers. After they leave, Steve heads upstairs to the bedroom he shares with Christy. He shuts the door and weeps. Tears of shame as well as grief. He's a family protector. He moved here to Idaho to keep his family safe, and he couldn't protect Maddie and Kaylee. When Christy tells her the news, Olivia goes numb, and then she takes control of things she can. She tells Robbie they need to get into the car with their 2 kids and drive through the night, 20 hours, to get to Rathdrum and her parents. She doesn't want to fly because she doesn't want to be trapped with strangers in an airport. She wants to work while Robbie drives. She wants to talk to whoever Kaylee talked to in her last hours alive. In the passenger seat, she goes into detective mode. Kaylee is on their mother's cell phone plan, and Olivia knows how to pull up her sister's phone log online to see who Kaylee called and who called Kaylee. She phones the people her sister spoke to, and she follows every lead she can find. By the time she and Robbie pull up in Rathdrum late afternoon the next day, Olivia already knows a few things. Kaylee was at the corner club just after 1 a.m. Kaylee called a rideshare driver from the grub truck at 1:50 a.m. and she got into the car with a friend. Olivia knows this because she reached the rideshare driver via text message. She knows that the friend was Maddie because she was told by the driver that the Grubhub truck had a camera on the roof and was live streaming. So she pulled up the video on Twitch and saw Maddie and Kaylee waiting in line. She knows 2 arrived home safely at 1:57 a.m. because she tracked down a neighbor's Ring camera footage. And she knows that Kaylee's last call that night was to Jack. Olivia tells her parents she's certain that Kaylee's murderer wasn't someone known to her. Olivia never met Xana and Ethan, but from Kaylee, she knew enough about them, their life, and their friends. She's certain that no one in their group would have done this. She tells her father that she feels in her gut that whoever did this was a stranger. The mystery is why. When he looks back on Olivia's quick thinking, Steve can't help but be impressed by his eldest daughter. He's always been sad that, within her smarts, she didn't go to law school after college. She's chosen instead to go to Los Angeles with Robbie so he could pursue a career in film and entertainment. Olivia is fiercely intelligent. She scored 1,300 on the SAT, and like her parents, she never takes no for an answer. Not from anyone. Kaylee was the same way. Here she is, pregnant, having driven with her husband through the night, 2 little ones in the back seat, on a mission to find answers. Steve makes himself a promise. He will not rest until whoever did this is brought to justice. That is what Kaylee would have want. That is what Kaylee would expect. And Steve will not let the Goncalves women down. Chapter 53, Moscow, Idaho, November 13th, 2022. This is the worst crime scene yet. Latah County Prosecutor Bill Thompson pulls up close to the King Road house and makes his way toward the police tape. He braces himself, knowing what lies within its perimeter. He's never had to deal with a crime this violent and of this magnitude, and Thompson has led the county prosecutorial office for 3 decades. The previous week was his 30-year anniversary. Some anniversary gift. 4 students stabbed to death in their beds. He ducks under the police tape and tells the officer outside he's going to do a tour of the interior of the house. The officers are deferential, making way for him, trying to be helpful. They revere Thompson. He might look like Santa Claus with his long white beard and spectacles, but appearances can be deceptive. To the cops, Thompson is the epitome of the adage, iron fist, velvet glove. At this point, he's a legend. If in 30 years of being Latah County's lead prosecutor, an elected position, Thompson has lost a case, no one can remember it. He has no intention of letting this one blot his record. Whoever did this will pay for it. Thompson makes his way up to the main level where he sees Xana and Ethan, and then to the upper level where he sees Maddie and Kaylee. He also sees the knife sheath beside the bed that Corporal Payne and the others had noticed earlier. That's going to be a critical piece of evidence if there's DNA on it. Whoever did this made a mistake. Thanks to the popularity of public genealogy websites like Ancestry and 23andMe, forensics can now take the smallest piece of DNA and construct an entire family tree around it in a method called investigative genetic genealogy, IgG for short. It's a game-changing scientific development for investigators. Leaving the knife sheath might be the murderer's only mistake. Time will tell. There's no sign right now of a murder weapon, of prints, but they're just starting. Thompson is confident they will find the perpetrator. They will find a motive. What he doesn't know is how long it'll take. But Thompson is patient. He prides himself on his patience. His most famous case was that of Moscow automotive repairman Charles Capone. In April 2010, Capone's estranged wife, Rachel Anderson, vanished. Her body was never found, but Thompson was nonetheless able to convict Capone of her murder because he waited and waited for 2 years until an accomplice who'd helped Capone strangle his wife and throw her body wrapped in a tarpaulin into the Snake River started talking. Ultimately, he became Thompson's star witness and testified as to exactly what had happened. Capone was sentenced to life in prison. Another famous case was the murder of UI football player Eric McMillan, who was gunned down on campus by 2 brothers from Seattle, James and Matthew Wells. There's no obvious connection between McMillan and the Wells brothers, but again, Thompson was patient. He wound up indicting not just the two brothers, but multiple family members who'd committed perjury to cover up what had happened. So no one who has worked closely with Bill Thompson, and that includes all 36 members of the Moscow PD, consider him soft. True, he votes Democrat, which makes him unusual in a Republican state. True, he has advocated for the community to create more resources to treat mental illness, saying that this would prevent crime. He's pushed publicly for this in 2007 after a local janitor, Jason Hamilton, who was known to be mentally unstable, went out drinking, then shot his wife, Crystal, in the head and went on a shooting spree at the sheriff's office, killing a total of 4 people, including beloved Moscow police officer Lee Newbill, and wounding another deputy, Brandon Jordan, before turning the gun on himself. And true, he didn't press for a trial in the case of John Lee, a schizophrenic kid who was known to many, many people in Moscow. In 2015, Lee shot his adoptive mother, Terry Grzybelski, a popular nurse practitioner, his landlord, and 2 more people at the local Arby's. He then sped off to Pullman, where cops had made the arrest. Everyone in Moscow knew and loved Terry. Everyone had watched John Lee grow up. They'd witnessed his mental struggle. So yes, Thompson had accepted a plea agreement whereby Lee was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. You could argue that that was soft, or you could argue that it was pragmatic. No one believed John Lee was in his right mind when he went on his killing spree. But this case, 4 bodies in a student house, stab wounds, rivers of blood, murders committed in the middle of the night in a densely populated area, with 2 survivors who, for whatever reason, waited 8 hours to call 911. Thompson knows that the chief will likely agree that the attack was targeted, that the two meet every morning at 8. They know each other's thought patterns inside and out. It may take weeks to go through all the stuff on these kids' phones to find the link they need, but they will find it. There's always a clue. He and Fry know that from experience. Back in 2009, a local man, Silas Parks, claimed his pregnant wife Sarah had died in a tragic house fire. In fact, he strangled her first, then set the fire himself. James Fry had been the lead investigator on that case. Bill Thompson, the prosecutor, and in the end, it was the autopsy of the mother and fetus that gave Silas away. Sarah did not have any smoke in her lungs, and the fetus had petechial hemorrhage in her eyes, an indication of trauma. Thompson had told Sarah's family to hang tough and let justice unfold as surely it would. Now he watches as the state police forensic team arrives with a trailer full of equipment. When they've gathered all the evidence they need, fingernails, skin scrapings, everything and anything, the police will call the county coroner, Kathy Mabut. She's probably already been told to cancel her dinner plans. Thompson considers if he might go down to the police station where the roommates and intimate circle of friends are being questioned. He needs to learn what happened in the hours before and after the murders. The timeline is essential. He also wants to ensure that whatever he learns is kept secret. Leaks can kill investigations. They can literally obstruct justice. He never talks publicly about a case until the very end, until sentencing, and even then, he's brief. Beyond the evidence truck, a crowd is gathering with microphones and cameras. This one is going to attract more press attention than usual. Oh well, they can gather, but they're all going to have to wait. It's business as usual. Oh boy. I just got water on chapter 54. Chapter 54. 1122 King Road, Moscow, Idaho, November 13th, 2022. It's cold. Even with the blanket Ava has placed over her shoulders, Emily is cold. She's in shorts. So are Dylan and Bethany. None of them is wearing shoes. They've been sitting out here for hours now, crying, freezing, numb. Captain Barrett gently asks them to go to the police station for interviews. Emily feels for the captain. She can tell how sad Barrett is to see her and Ava crying like this. They're like daughters to him. Emily just wants to do something. She's just lost her best friend. She has no idea how or why or who did this. Her world is in a free fall. She wants to be able to control something. She looks around. She can look after Dylan, her little, and Bethany, who has lost her big, Maddie. She can give them clothes, protect them as best as she can, like a mother hen. So before driving to the police station, Emily pops into her apartment to get clothes for all of them, and bottles of water and snacks. When they get to the station, it feels as if the officer on duty isn't sure what to do. It dawns on Emily that it isn't just her world that's been rocked. None of them, not even the police, are ready for a tornado like this. The friends sit together, mostly in silence. Random people enter and leave. John Henrik, the director of student care and case management, appears along with a woman counselor who asks if they want to talk about their feelings. The group says no, they aren't ready to talk about anything with anyone. They just want to be left alone. Henrik assures them before he leaves that the last thing they need to worry about is classes. He'll be in touch with all of their professors. Emily peers downstairs at one point and with a pang sees Jeff and Jasmine Kernoodle being led into a room on the first floor. She intuits that the story is overtaking them, that the news of what's happened is likely to reach their nearest and dearest before they can get to them, thanks to social media. So she phones her mom, Karen. Mom, I'm at the police station. I'm safe. I don't really want to talk about it, but I'm not going to have my phone for a while. Karen is in disbelief. She hasn't seen or heard anything, and Emily wants to protect her from the details for as long as possible. All you need to know is that they're just all gone, and we can talk about it later. One by one, the friends are peeled off and taken to interview rooms like you see on crime dramas. A room where the tape recorder is going and the window is a one-way mirror. They never learn who's watching their interviews. They just know they're being watched. They don't know if the prosecutor, Bill Thompson, is there or not. They later wonder if he might have been. He's going to need the answers to the questions they are asked. Like why the police want to know were Emily, Hunter, Josie, and Lyndon awake so late the night before? Why would Emily have texted Santa at that hour? Who exactly did Dylan see? Why did she think he was a firefighter? Did he see her when she saw him? Was he in the house already when everyone got home? Why does she think the masked man in black walked away from her? Thank God, Emily thinks, the man in black did walk away from her. Is this person now coming for them? After their interviews, the friends determine they're not going to separate. No one wants to go home. For Bethany and Dylan, that's not even possible. They swear to look out for one another, to protect one another at all costs from whoever attacked their friends. It's the only positive step they can take when everything else has gone irretrievably wrong, irretrievably backward. Chapter 55, Moscow, Idaho, November 13th, 2022. Daniel Ramirez, a journalist for the Argonaut, the University of Idaho student newspaper, is getting coffee at the drive-thru with the Argonaut's editor, Hadia Tariq, when their phones ping simultaneously with a vandal alert warning students to shelter in place. Ordinarily, this sort of vandal alert is issued when there's a moose on campus. This time it says there's been a homicide. The alert also tells them to stay away from the King Road area. So they do what every good journalist would. They head straight to 1122 King. They see the multitude of police cars and tape standing in front of the house. Directing the others is Tyson Barrett, whom they recognize because he's the campus police commandant. They ask Barrett for a statement, but he only repeats the vandal alert with no further details. So Hadia and Daniel head to the Aeronaut newsroom on the top floor of the Bruce B. Pittman Center to see what they can learn online. The students are conversing on a college chat app, Yik Yak, a kind of anonymous closed version of Twitter. And there's huge confusion because at 3 p.m. another vandal alert is posted. This one saying that there is no threat to the community. What does this mean? Daniel and Hadia can see the students are confused and scared. Can they really walk around safely? The student journalists want to be able to report on this, but what can they say that it's accurate? Conspiracy theorists are already flying on Yik Yak. Conspiracy theories are already flying on Yik Yak. So too are the names Xana, Ethan, Maddie, and Kaylee, but not in such a way that Daniel and Hadia feel they're reportable. They're student journalists, yes, but they consider themselves journalists first, students second. They take their job seriously. On Yik Yak, the consensus seems to be that 1122 King Road is a party house, so a lot of students are suggesting that fentanyl must have been involved. Maybe it's even hoisted. The homicide has something to do with Emma Bailey, who was seen in the Whites, the apartment building next to the house, the weekend before. The following spring, Emma will be charged with the delivery of a controlled substance in connection with the death of another UI student. Prosecutors will dismiss the case. Could she have been at the King Road house last night? At around 5 p.m., a friend of Daniel's in a Catholic students group forwards something that Daniel deems the most reliable source so far to the victims' identities. The students have been urged to pray for the four victims, whose names are given. Even so, Daniel and Hadia want to wait to publish anything until they get confirmation from the police, and they know from bitter experience that it's going to be tough to get much from Moscow PD. Hadia is still waiting for the Public Information Officer, or PIO, to get back to her about someone she refers to as Knife Guy, a man dressed in black, riding a bicycle and holding a knife, and had harassed a couple of people on Paradise Street back in September. Hadia had written that up and done a follow-up piece because the police had issued a report saying he was no longer a threat to anyone, but didn't explain why. Just like she's waiting for answers about the 2 campus deaths that have occurred while she's been at the Argonaut. One student died of an overdose, a suspected suicide, in the spring. The Argonaut never wrote about it because the police never got back to Hadia about it. Another student, Hudson Linlow, was found dead in the creek in May. Sources said it was a direct result of hazing. He'd been made to drink out of a 5-gallon bucket and was then abandoned by people who'd made him do it. Hadia wanted to report what her sources told her, but with no confirmation from police, she couldn't. She felt that would be irresponsible. So now she and Daniel have nothing official to go on regarding what happened on King Road. Yik Yak, meanwhile, is exploding with all sorts of speculative storylines. One is that a group of men dressed in black entered the house. Another is that they were killed by members of a Colombian drug cartel who had known Xana's mother in prison and wanted payback. Another is that one of the 4 victims had been about to expose the Greek houses for sex trafficking. The idea being that the new sorority members were coerced into dating fraternity members. Yet another is they were killed to cover up some kind of hazing sexual assault. Another is about a love triangle involving Ethan, Dana, and either Maddie or Kaylee. Every minute, there's a new invented plot line. This is like no story the duo has covered before. They aren't sure of protocol. Surely it isn't right to start reaching out to victims' families so soon. Hedaya feels that would not be respectful. She assumes, incorrectly, as it turns out, that other journalists will feel the same way. That evening, Daniel sees that PBS appears to have led no one else. That evening, Daniel sees that PBS appears to have a lead that no one else does. A segment on the 4 homicides in Moscow comes on the news. According to the PBS report, the students were shot. Daniel and Hedaya look at each other. How on earth can PBS know that? Did the police tell PBS something they're not telling other news organizations? Surely PBS can't have gotten it wrong, can they? The 2 are confused, but also beginning to feel an emotion that will become all too familiar in the coming weeks as members of the national media descend on their town and report a barrage of nonsense in the absence of facts. What they feel is disappointment. That's where we're going to stop, guys. Okay, let me get back on to see you guys. We're going to start with chapter 56. Tomorrow, as you guys know, is the hearing. So Lana will be covering that. I'm still on this weird mic. So Lana's going to be covering that and streaming it. It's going to be streaming tomorrow. The hearing on the non-dissemination order. Yeah, so tomorrow I will not be reading because that's happening. Let me take this off and put myself on. Where is my little... Okay, hold on. I have to figure out. There I am. Hi. I swear, you guys, that was the most I think I've read. Well, maybe not. Oh my God, 14 asterisks is here. Hi. And Austin, you guys are so amazing. Thanks for being here. Thanks for everyone who contributed. Let me thank you guys now. Mama Hen, love you. Thank you for your time. You're so appreciated and loved. I love you. You're so sweet. Hi, Crime Tourist. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jackie. And tell it to Ellie. Thank you so much. Mama Hen, you became a member. Love you. Okay, guys, what did you think? I mean, we can... Hi, Mystery. How are you doing? Yeah, seriously, we do have to talk. Thank you, guys. I hope it was good. I was annoyed because of the mic. You guys, so this thing has a microphone. I have no idea where it is, but whatever. I'll figure it out. Hopefully it'll start making more sense. I feel like this part of it is a little better than yesterday's. I feel like James Patterson kind of picked up his writing a little bit. So I don't know. Maybe it's just going to get better from here. And I'm going to reach out to StreamYard. Thank you, Crystal White. Thank you so much. You guys, seriously, like, so tomorrow, hopefully, we're going to find out what's going to happen with the gag order. And I feel if it doesn't happen tomorrow, by the 23rd, we're going to find out. It's going to be, I'm sure it's going to be lifted unless Ann Taylor or Bill Thompson put in a motion to have it stay by the 23rd. is my guess, unless the lawyers don't want that to happen. You guys are so cute. Thank you guys so much. I won't take up any more of your time, because some people, like with reading, it's kind of weird for a live because people are like, stop talking. Like, don't say hello and don't say goodbye. It's like, no, it's a live. We kind of do that here, but people do get annoyed. I mean, I'll put some chapters in, so if you want to like jump around and you don't want to hear all this, and if you missed in the beginning, in the description, if you want to get this book or you want the audiobook, I have a link. It's an affiliate link. If you hit it, it'll take you straight to getting the book. And if you get, I get like, I think for the hardback, I get 90 cents. But it's just cool because it's like, it just takes you straight there. So if you want it, you could listen to me all day, you guys. Thank you so much. All right, guys, I'm going to go grab some food, get to working. You guys have a great day. We'll see what happens tomorrow. And then I will do this again Friday. And then maybe, I think it'll be probably a 4-parter. Like we'll probably have to do another one that's this long. And then like a 2-hour one. Thank you. What should I eat for lunch? I want, you know what I want? I want a Chinese chicken salad. I don't know if it's lunchtime where you guys are, but it is here. You're hungry now, I think. I'm starving. They said Arby's in the book, and I was like, I can't eat. Like, that's gross. I can't do Arby's. Thank you guys so much. Good night or good day. Bye. Thank you.